everyone. Welcome to SIFTD's Game of the Year Awards for 2019. I'm Shane Satterfield.
I'm Matt Kyle.
And we are about to pick 24 different categories for the very best in video games from the past 12 months. No, we did add a couple categories back this year. We brought back fighting and driving, although one of us brought back one of those.
Yeah. He has 24 categories. I have 23.
23. Yeah, Matt decided not to make a pick for one of the categories this year, and I totally get it. Before we get into sort of going award by award, what do you think is kind of the theme of 2019 now that we sort of have it in our rearview mirror?
The theme kind of seems to be, what do you like?
Yeah. It was not an amazing year for games.
It's not a year for like objective, like wow, like that game, whoa. Like
Heads
it's more
and shoulders
like,
above
hey,
the rest.
this is my kind of thing. I like this.
Yeah.
Not everyone's gonna like this. You know, like the most high profile AAA game is like the definition of that. Death Stranding is like
some people are gonna like it.
Some people are gonna dig it. Some people are gonna think it's the most boring thing they played all year.
Yeah.
3 guesses which category I fall. It was not the most boring thing I played all year. Actually.
No, me either. Yeah, me either. But it was close. It was close for me.
It got saved.
That's a category we should add. Yeah. Most boring game.
It got saved from winning that by some sailors.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we do have 24 different awards. We have about 2 hours to get through them all, so we really got to kind of get jumping on them. We're going to kick things off with, let me get my rundown here, Best First-Person Shooter.
Was there some Fantasy League thing you wanted to do?
No, we covered that last show.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that already. So we're going to dive into Best First-Person Shooter of 2019. A lot of our awards, Matt and I are just picking a winner. And then there's about a handful of categories where Matt and I will choose a runner-up and a winner. But generally those are towards the end. They're the bigger categories. So for the first, I think like 15 awards, we're just picking a winner. Matt, you can feel free to toss in, mention another game if you want to, but we're not officially.
Honestly, this was a pretty hard set of picks.
It was.
Not to decide between games, but to pick a game.
I had to work hard on these,
especially for this first category. The first time, I'm like, did I like any of these?
Yeah.
Honestly, this is probably Gears 5, but Gears 5 is not a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Here we are.
Here we are. And I don't think anyone's going to guess what either of our picks are.
We went backwards on this one.
We did. Yep. Matt, so what is your pick for the best first-person shooter of 2019?
My pick is Apex Legends.
And that doesn't surprise me because it's also one of just a couple shooters that you played this year, right?
Yeah, I didn't play. I played the big ones. I played
Modern Warfare.
And I played Borderlands. I guess that's also an RPG. But
that's a shooter.
Played Metro Exodus. I played the big stuff. But even as someone who's not a multiplayer guy, there's just something about how this game feels, which is probably that Respawn.
Oh yeah.
Titanfall touch.
Absolutely. Yep.
That I liked playing. It's the only battle royale game I really stuck for any length of time, which granted was only a month on and off.
That's the longest you've done it.
But it's the only one that I think is fun to play moment to moment and feels good to play and isn't just sort of putting up with janky weirdness for the sake of something you enjoy. And especially because it was such an out of nowhere surprise, I thought it was really good. And so in a year that I think was pretty light on the ground for decent first person shooters, Apex Legends gets my pick.
Okay, and this is, as you guys know, if you followed me for years across my career, first person shooters are a big part of my gaming diet. I play a lot of shooters. I tend to play Call of Duty a lot. I have kind of stuck with Modern Warfare multiplayer. They've done a pretty good job of putting out regular updates for that.
I ended up deleting it because it got to 150 gigabytes, and I'm like, you know what? No.
No, there was a patch, 12 gigabytes.
Yeah.
The next day, another 12 gigabyte patch. It's 150 gigs. It's been on the market for a month. It's insane. So it is not my pick for best first-person shooter of 2019. That honor goes to Metro Exodus. I think what happened to me is I started looking back across the shooters this year, and they all just kind of blurred together. And look, I do respect Apex Legends. I get the perspective that you're coming from. It does feel really great, and it's a free-to-play, AAA, battle royale shooter. Impressed by it. But I was more impressed by Metro Exodus. The single-player campaign. The multiplayer, obviously, non-existent, which is, typically I weight multiplayer pretty heavily with this award. Mm-hmm. But this year, the multiplayer in all these games was just so samey that I couldn't find that any shooter had a leg up on another shooter. So I decided to just look at which shooter did I have the most fun playing, and that was Metro Exodus. It was the moodiest. It was the most different shooter on the market, just kind of the tempo that the game played at. The setting was completely different from anything else. It wasn't some military thing. It wasn't some goofy sci-fi, far-flung, intergalactic shooter. It had its own tone. It had its own timbre. To me, this shooter stood out the most in 2019, and it is not a complete game. It doesn't have multiplayer, and I would argue that the post-launch support for this hasn't been great. But again, just thinking back across the year, it was the one that stuck with me the most. And I would say probably, I know this won't be a popular opinion, but probably the second game on that list for me would be Rage 2. I know that game got...
I keep forgetting about Rage 2.
It kind of got murdered by critics, and it didn't show up really at all at the Game Awards, but I had a ton of fun playing Rage 2. I had a blast with it.
My favorite... the best time I had playing a first-person shooter this year doesn't count because it wasn't... It was a remaster. Halo Reach.
Yeah. I played that. It feels old.
It does, but I will say it looks good. Like it
does.
Doesn't, I think it made the transition to the Xbox One the best of all the Halo games.
Yeah.
That were remasters. Like it looks. I mean, it's obviously the newest of those, but like it looks the most like it wasn't a remaster.
Yep.
Yeah. The art style translates the best to a higher resolution, I think.
Yep.
But it was just a straight port, so it doesn't really matter.
It plays like an old game. Like it's funny. Like if you play a lot of shooters, it's kind of hard to see how they're evolving and changing if you keep playing every single one. But when you go back and just play this game from 10 years ago, that's when you kind of really notice, wow, okay, this genre actually has evolved a good bit over the last decade. So there you go. There are our picks for best first-person shooter of 2019. Next up, a category that a lot of times ties into the prior category, and that is Best Multiplayer Game. Now, the title of this award is open-ended for a reason, because that can encapsulate a lot of things. It can be PvE, PvP, it can be asymmetrical. Anything that gets multiple people involved in the same video game falls into this category. Matt, what was your pick?
For this, I pretty much went with kind of the thing I played the most multiplayer, and that was Ace Combat 7.
Wow. I honestly didn't dive into the multiplayer too much after launch. How did it end up kind of shaking out?
I mean, it's pretty much standard dogfighting stuff. I'm just really good at it. So, I played it more than probably I normally would.
I've said that many times that...
You'd be shocked how many people who play video games as much as these people do not know how to do a split S.
Oh.
But I'm an old, plain, space dogfighting nerd, so, I can get my head around it pretty well. And the surprisingly strong connections in this. The gameplay modes are not very diverse. It's basically dogfighting, or you can do a co-op thing to attack, like a flying fortress. There were missions for that. So it's pretty basic, but how many multiplayer arcade jet fighter games exist these days? Almost none.
One?
Yeah, pretty much this.
Yeah.
So came out January, I think, early in the year.
Really early in the year.
But I played this for a good chunk of January and February, so I'm not going to tell anyone who isn't a huge plane nerd to go play this, because it's not particularly compelling if you're not. It's literally interesting to me because of what it is and how little competition it has. But this was the thing I spent the most time on.
Okay. My pick for best multiplayer game, again, no, it's not Call of Duty Modern Warfare. People always assume I'm going to give every award to Call of Duty for because I liked the original Modern Warfare. It's 13 years ago or whatever. Not the case this year. And I think this is going to surprise some people. My pick for best multiplayer game is Death Stranding. To me, again, when I was talking about first-person shooters, and I looked back across all the games that came out this year, they were all very samey. Or you look at games like The Division 2, which, again, is just kind of this template that's just repeated over and over in this loot shooter subgenre. This, to me, was the most creative, interesting, and functional multiplayer implementation in gaming in 2019.
So basically the opposite of my choice.
Yeah, I guess it is kind of.
Like you went for full innovation, and I went for totally basic, does the job.
Yeah, but you had fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's kind
I
of...
do check in once in a while to make sure my roads are still up.
I mean, think about that, though. And even just the Dark Souls concept, where you're leaving kind of traces for people. And it's also been interesting to see how people troll with that stuff and leave kind of traps and things like that. It makes me think about the game in very interesting and different ways from how I think about really any other video game as far as connectivity and multiplayer is concerned. I don't like a lot about Death Stranding, but the one thing I love a whole lot is the connectivity and how the multiplayer works in it.
It was funny to see Norman Reedus at the Game Awards and think, I've spent so much time making you pee.
Yeah, he gave out, Best Action Game, I think it was?
Something like that, yeah.
I guess he couldn't give out, the Best Director Award.
No, or Best, voice actor.
Or whatever else it
won,
was, yeah.
That went to Mads.
I mean, you could have. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, they do that usually at the Oscars. Last year's winner is usually the one that gives it out.
Yeah.
For the acting stuff.
Yeah. And look, I don't like Death Stranding, but I can recognize that there are parts of it that are very, very good. And
this element of it is certainly to me the only compelling aspect of the game.
Yeah.
This is the only thing that made me interested and kept me playing.
I mean, it's kind of the whole concept of the game. If you've listened to that kind of
Strand game.
Yeah, that symposium that Kojima gave about the strands and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of thought that has gone into it.
I mean, it's the usual. I mean, it's his usual bullshit about it's you came up with a weird word for a thing that a lot of other things have already done, like transfarring.
Yeah,
it's
that's right. I forgot about that.
You just moved your save over, dude. That's not a revolutionary tech. Asymmetrical multiplayer, asynchronous multiplayer has been a thing in mobile games forever. But the implementation of that is interesting and good.
It's tied into everything too, which makes a difference.
Yeah, and it's it affects how you play moment to moment. So sure.
Yep. All right, let's move along. Next up is Best Adventure Game. People, I think, get confused by this sometimes because there are some websites are a little loose in how they define adventure game. Adventure game for us is a first-person walking simulator, a point-and-click adventure game. Any game where the primary thing you're doing is adventuring and looking for stuff.
Or kind of more story-driven.
Yeah.
Less Twitch-focused and more...
Generally no combat.
Yeah, or if there is combat, it's usually
predetermined
or more thoughtful.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking at for Best Adventure Game of 2019.
Could
Matt?
Telltale make it? That's really
right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Would you think that this was a Telltale game?
Yeah.
That's Adventure Games. Yeah.
If we put this in a terrible 3D engine, would you believe this was a Telltale game? There's your litmus test.
Okay, Matt, so what's your pick for Best Adventure Game?
Mine is After Party.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by this one.
This is definitely...
Because it was my pick at first.
Mm-hmm. This is definitely my shit. I love weird sardonic takes on the afterlife. Weird depictions of pop culture sensibility infused versions of hell are one of my favorite things. And one of fiction's favorite things, going all the way back to Dante's Inferno, which was basically a political diatribe disguised as religious fan fiction.
Yeah.
And this is exceptionally well written. It's very well performed. It has.
I think it has the best voice acting and writing of the year.
I think that's probably true. Ashley Birch is great in as Parvati in Outer Worlds, but I think she's better as the demon cab driver in this.
I agree. Yep.
And you can actually see one of my favorite. I will buy games she is in because she's in them.
Yeah.
And one of the early on, also the main girl in this is Janina
Garofalo?
No, not Janina Garofalo. It's Janina Garvanka. She played the main character in Battlefront 2.
The female character.
Yeah. The Imperial pilot.
Yeah.
I wish I can never remember her last name. I've met her twice and I can't remember her damn last name. But she's the main girl in this, and then it's just an amazing cast. And early on, I think you see one of my favorite things about what Ashley Birch does when she's playing the taxi driver early on. Birch can talk quietly under her breath, but still make you understand her enunciation of every word, and it comes across.
She actually does that when you talk to her.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a skill. It's not really a skill you can learn so much as something you learn by being very anxious all the time.
Yeah,
and she uses it in her performance in a way that almost no other voice actor working today does, and it's incredibly effective.
She used to do it on Hey Ash, What You Playing too.
Yeah. And so she's great, but also just the general. The premise is fantastic. Everything's it's one of the funniest games of the last several years. Like
they fully executed the concept.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, she is Janina Gavankar. That's her.
Perfect time.
She's great too, and it's if you haven't played it, you should. It is on Game Pass. If you have it, just download it and
Someone
play
just said in
thing.
The chat that Untitled Goose Game just went on Game Pass today.
Oh, that's great too.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
I know that's kind of the thing that everybody wants to pick as their adventure game this year, but I'm going to go with After Party just because it plucked the right string for me.
Okay, so After Party was my pick, leading up to my deliberations. But in the last couple of weeks, when there hasn't been a ton of other games to play, I have been going back and kind of picking up indie games. I went back, I played Disco Elysium. And a couple others. One of the other games that I played that made a huge impact on me was Outer Wilds. Have you played this, Matt?
Yeah. That was the game that I actually had pre-ordered somehow, and I didn't know why. And eventually I looked up, because the day it came out, I had it. I'm like, I already have this? It turned out a year before I had put a code in for it, like that June. So I must have gotten a code from someone at E3.
Interesting.
And put it in, and I forgot about it. But I didn't even know, and I did play it for a while. I appreciate what it is, but what it is mostly annoys the hell out of me. In the same way that like Majora's Mask annoys me with the weird time limit. You got to get to you didn't do one thing right, you got to do the whole thing over again. But I do think Outer Wilds is an amazing like clockwork contraption of a game. It's incredible.
Yeah, so to explain it for you guys who maybe haven't played it, the game plays in 22-minute intervals, and you're basically on this planet trying to discover other planets, but you only have 22 minutes to get to another planet, land,
and do whatever you're going to do.
And do whatever you're going to do.
Because the sun explodes.
Yeah, the universe explodes, ultimately.
And the idea is you do it over and over again, and your character remembers doing it.
Because it saves. Everything that you accomplish actually saves to, your logs and whatnot.
And everything happens, unless you interfere with it, everything happens the same way every time, except what you've changed. So you have to kind of basically have to figure out a solar system-sized puzzle to figure out why this is happening and stop it.
It literally almost melted my brain.
It's really impressive.
I couldn't believe that this game had slipped through the cracks for me. And that nobody that I knew had kind of brought it up and been like, hey, this is some game that everyone should kind of check out. Again, After Party was my pick. And then after I play this, it supplanted it for me. Because it's just, it's hard to think of many games like it.
Yeah.
Like you listed off Majora's Mask,
there isn't
obviously.
Really a game like it. I mean, Majora's Mask is the closest comparison, I think, because of the nature of the concept.
The time and
the timing and the fact that everything happens independent of you.
Yeah.
And your job is basically to interfere with the workings of the world in a timely manner.
And they're also intertwined, so there's dominoes that topple later on based upon what you do. So I was really, really impressed with this game. This is one of those games where I play it and I'm like, I could not imagine making this game. I couldn't imagine designing it. I couldn't imagine then trying to execute the idea. That's the best interactive entertainment to me. That's what it does. It's something that you feel like you could never make. So excellent work, man. I'm glad I got onto this before the Game of the Year Awards so that I could recognize it. Really, really good game. I highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah. First time I took off, I ran it. I got out of the atmosphere. I hit a rock and died.
Yeah, it happens like that, though. Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes it be like that.
Yep, that's the way it is. Next up, Best Role-Playing Game, Best RPG. This is the first category that we agree, and we have the same winner, and that winner is Disco Elysium. And I am so glad that I went back and played this game. I knew I was gonna, because anytime you recommend a game that wholeheartedly, I play it. That's just the way it is. I respect your opinion that much that if you tell me I need to play something, I play it. So knowing the Game of the Year Awards were coming up, I went back and started going at it. I wish I've had more time to play it, because I can see based upon the amount of time I've spent with it that I don't even know if I've scratched the surface, to be honest with you.
It's a lot. And there's also an element of Outer Wilds to it because
it is.
What time and how long it takes you to do things tie in, and you can miss stuff, and you can change things permanently. Like the timeline matters on this game.
I can see why this game hasn't taken off to be like this smash hit. Like I'm not surprised that we're not getting like reports of has sold 3 million copies or anything like that, because I think when you look at it, it's not a particularly inviting game. A lot of the characters are ugly. The color palette's kind of drab, but once you start playing it, I feel like those elements are what actually make the game great.
Yeah, it's the despair of it all that, like, the look creates, and like how it feels like a scrappy underdog of a game telling a scrappy underdog of a story.
Tale. Yeah.
And I think one of the best descriptions of it was from another developer, another indie developer. His name I can't remember, but he's on Twitter after it won something on the Game Awards, and he basically tweeted, "I only played about 30 minutes of Disco Elysium because after playing for about 15 minutes, I started getting very angry and jealous that I didn't make it, so I had to stop." And I'm like, it is that kind of game. You're like, oh my god, like this is so good. Like,
there's some genius stuff.
It's so good, you wish you were part of it. somehow.
Yeah, part of the project. Yeah,
and like it's like nothing else except maybe Planescape Torment, or like some of the all-time great like.
But this doesn't feel old and dusty like Planescape Torment. This is,
but I mean,
those concepts.
It will in 20 years.
Sure.
But like
every game will.
But this is the closest comparison I have is something like Planescape, where it's all done through dialogue. It's skill check based, but it's entirely up to how you want to play it. You can be utterly different characters from playthrough to playthrough because you can pick certain dialogue choices that make your character believe certain things, which changes the nature of your dialogue options. Like you can make your character like a hardline communist, or you can make him like a hardline capitalist, or like someone who believes that imperialism should rule, or like you can make him into a monarchist. Like and it's all tied directly into the actual political and economic situations of the world they're in, but it's all commentating on our world, and it's brilliant.
If there's one thing I hope to accomplish from our Game of the Year awards this year, it's to convince some people to give this game a shot.
And I think it'll be on consoles next year, so it'll be a wider audience for it then. Also, like if you watch the Game Awards and you came away wondering why the people who made this game thanked Marx and Engels, and like you haven't played this game. Like you gave away that you didn't play Disco Elysium. If you're like, why do they thank Marx and Engels? It's like play Disco Elysium. It's there.
You'll find it.
Like it's a 70s cop show that's also a cyberpunk like dystopia, but it's also like a civics book.
Well, the other thing about it is, what does that lower third say? Role-playing. This is a pure role-playing game.
Yeah, it is the truest realization of that
genre
term.
Absolutely.
In a very long time.
Yep. All right, let's move on. Next is Best Indie Game. This is always a tough category every year. And then, we were talking earlier about kind of inconsistencies with awards. This is kind of one where I think both of us maybe not. Maybe it's a little inconsistent. Well,
in the sense of
maybe for me,
our
not
best
for
RPG
you.
should have been this.
Yeah.
Sorta, but you can't double up that much.
Yep. So anyway, Best Indie Game, what's your pick, Matt?
I went with Rebel Galaxy Outlaw.
I'm not surprised.
In part because there's just nowhere else to put it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give it something. Like I probably could have been fine with giving this a Disco Elysium as well.
Yeah.
But Disco Elysium got Best RPG, so this gets Indie Game because it's the only place I could put it.
Yeah.
I almost tried to put it in first-person shooter.
Just you try to slide one by me.
Go fuck yourself because it's all in first person. But and you are shooting things.
Yeah.
But I decided not to have that fight, and so I just put it here. This is the closest and most true successor to the old Wing Commander games that I think has ever been made. It is not an open world simulator like Elite Dangerous or what Star Citizen purports to one day be. It is a action-driven, trading, shooting space fighter game in which you are it jumps you to the action. You hit autopilot to jump to the next thing that's going to happen. Like there's not like tons of transit and all that. It's very Western set in space, as you can just see from this. Like you're basically playing a woman who is pretty much a smuggler gunslinger, the aunt of the person you played in the first game, Rebel Galaxy. This is a prequel. And you basically, you are in serious debt and trouble, and there's prices on your head, and you get a cheapo, terrible ship from like a guy who owes you a favor, and you have to build yourself back up to, ostensibly to kind of, be the best in the quadrant, but also just to save your own ass because they're going to come back after you, and you better be ready for that.
This game is right in your wheelhouse.
Yep. This is exactly the kind of thing I wish was made more often. It isn't much. This is made by just like a tiny little company of dudes and maybe dudettes. I don't know the full lineup, but it's just a very small company in Texas. The soundtrack is like this crazy rock, like country stuff that like I don't really have a descriptor for. I've never heard music like it before, but I like it.
Yeah.
And I dig it. Like if you don't, I mean, it is an Epic Game Store exclusive, but it is coming to PS4 and I think Switch next year. So hopefully more people get to play it then.
Right on. My pick for best indie game, and I do think I have a little bit of a conflict of interest here maybe. My pick is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night.
This was almost my pick too.
Now some people may say that it is an action RPG. It's kind of right on the border.
It's a Metroidvania, which is like an action adventure, action. I mean, it
has
go either way.
Some pretty heavy RPG elements in it, but but a lot of people would say it's Castlevania. It can't be an RPG, and that's what I told myself to give best RPG to Disco Elysium, and then give best indie to Bloodstained. This is Iga. You're seeing right now on the screen the godfather of Castlevania. This is his new indie take on Castlevania. I doubt he'll ever work on Castlevania again, so this is all we're going to get. But the good news is it's amazing. I don't know if I have ever played an indie game as long as I played this one. It took me over 20 hours to finish the game. Most indie games I play, I'm done with like in 2 or 3 hours. You could have absolutely sold this game, I believe, as a full-price game. And I don't think anyone who actually bought it and played it would have regretted the purchase. We can't get Castlevania anymore from Konami, but if this is what we're going to get going forward, I won't miss Castlevania. All it is a logo at that point.
No, it's plenty good enough.
It's
better than half the Castlevanias.
Yeah, easily, for sure. And again, it was so long, and the character progression and development is great. The Metroidvania level design is incredible.
Yeah, and you can see a bunch of like elements that like clearly are things he's wanted to do for a long time, but Konami wouldn't let them. Put in the game.
Wouldn't let him, or maybe it just didn't fit within the construct.
But this was like everything in the stew pot.
Yeah,
including stew. Like you can make stew in this game too. It feels like he just held nothing back on this game.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of fun, and it feels like the old games. It feels like the best of the Igavanias. But I didn't miss the Castlevania branding at all.
Me either. I don't miss Castlevania now because we have this franchise. And hopefully it's sold well enough that they can make more and they don't have to keep sort of crowdfunding them going forward.
I would crowdfund another one if they wanted to do it that way too. Which I wouldn't say about everything I've crowdfunded, but I would be back in on this again.
I think most people would not say that about almost everything they've crowdfunded. There's a lot of crowdfunding horror stories out there. But this is definitely not one of them. In fact, this is one of the best Kickstarter stories out there. It took him a while. It was delayed a couple times, but the wait was definitely worth it.
Yeah, this was not another Mighty Number 9.
Nope, absolutely not. This is the type of game that restores faith in crowdfunding and Kickstarter. So kudos to Iga.
He has earned his leather cowboy hat once again.
He absolutely has. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is my best indie game of 2019. Next up, best VR game. I did not play a ton of VR this year. I'm just going to be honest right here. I've only played like 5 VR games this year.
I think I played 2.
My original pick for this was Beat Saber because I didn't play Beat Saber last year when it came out. I got it when it came out on PlayStation 4. And it actually even came out on PlayStation 4 last November. I just didn't give it a go until I was trying to figure out a way to play video games to get in shape. And I was like, everyone says Beat Saber, but the PlayStation VR version of Beat Saber is not great. And then I just recently played the Doctor Who VR experience. It was terrible. I played Vader Immortal. That was okay. It's kind of like a Star Wars fans like VR wet dream. but it's very non-interactive for the most part. Have you played it?
I played the first episode of it. It's just like it's like
a carnival ride, kind of.
Yeah, it's like the Void stuff. It's just like you sort of go through. There's a little bit of action scene, and then you walk through some more stuff, and that's it. Like,
and so ultimately, my award, I would just admit, is not as well as informed as it should be.
Yeah, although I would argue that like there's not a lot of stuff that you needed to play in VR this year. It was not a great year.
It was, but yet it seems to have turned the corner. Mm-hmm. So Quest is sold out so much that retailers are starting to jack up the price of Oculus Quest. Index is on back order. It seems to be finally the momentum is happening. To me, it just wasn't a great year for software. So what's your pick for best VR game, Matt?
My pick was Ace Combat 7.
Okay.
Possibly the only award show in the industry giving Ace Combat 7 2 awards.
2 awards.
Slap that on the box, Namco. But this game has 3 VR missions in it, exclusive to PlayStation VR, and I wish it had double or triple that, but what is there is fantastic, and it's really well done playing combat, and the difference between playing like normally and being able to look around and spot enemy fighters like up above your canopy, and then like pulling your plane around to like face the direction your eyes are facing and lining that all up. It's really feels good, and it's a lot of fun. And the only thing I went back to routinely in VR this year was this game. Okay.
I'll just be perfectly honest with you. My pick for best VR game of 2019 comes from me playing it at E3. Mm-hmm. I don't even have a headset that can play this game, but I played it at E3 and it blew my mind, and that game is called Asgard's Wrath.
I have heard very good things.
It is an action RPG for VR, but honestly, like, they should release this in 2D because it's just a great action RPG on its own. Obviously steeped in Norse mythology. It is a first-person action RPG like Skyrim and games like that. So it was immediately accessible and approachable for me. I only played, 30 minutes of it probably at E3, but it was by far the best VR game I've ever played. Like, I was blown away. Like, the first time I put on VR, my jaw dropped and hung open, and it hadn't happened again until I started playing this game. And a lot of it just has to do with the visual quality of the game. Like, a lot of times you watch a trailer for a VR game, and then you go play it, and you're like, this looks nothing like the trailers. Because you get the screen door effect, and especially with PlayStation VR, like, all bets are off as far as visual fidelity is concerned. This was one of those games where you see the trailer, and then you go play it, you're like, oh my god, it maybe looks better with the HMD on. So, big fan of this game. If you buy one VR game this year, I would definitely recommend that this is the one that you get. Boneworks just came out, which was another game that I kind of had my eye on. I haven't had a chance to play it. Initial reviews are mixed. So once I kind of saw the reviews for that coming in, this was an easy choice for me. The industry needs more VR games like this. And now that Insomniac is kind of out of the VR game, or at least out of the third-party VR game, I wonder how many studios are going to aspire to make games like that. Because Stormland, another kind of really good VR game this year from Insomniac, that is one studio that was pushing to just make great games in VR instead of making a great VR game. And Asgard's Wrath, to me, is the epitome of that. So, again, I'm just going to qualify it by saying it's not the most informed opinion on the best VR game of the year, but it's the best one that I played.
I think that's the best you can ask for a VR award at this point.
Yeah. It's hard. And also I have motion sickness problems with it, so I do the best I can, people. That's all I can say. Next up, a genre that kind of comes and goes in our Game of the Year awards because it used to be the most popular genre. Now it's almost non-existent, but this year it was huge. Like, this may have been the hardest category to pick for me, and that is Best Action Adventure. I knew what you were going to pick, Matt.
Yeah.
So what is your pick?
My pick Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
Yep. Game of the Year at the Game Awards.
Yep. And this is, again, it's From Software making, more of an action-y game than the Dark Souls and Bloodborne, which are, action games, but they lean more toward action RPG, I would say. Yeah. This has elements of that, but it's much more about the combat system.
Yep.
There is pretty much nothing more satisfying in action gaming than this combat system this year for me. Even going back to it, it's sort of like, I haven't played it since like June when I finished it a long time ago. So I went back to play it again and remind myself, did I like this much? Was it as good as I remember? Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is. And,
I even enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's it is
That's
long.
A big deal.
It gets scary, hard in places. Even some of my friends who are like hardcore Dark Souls people are like, it's too hard, I can't do it, because the skill set for Dark Souls is different than the skill set for this game. You need better reflexes in this game to some degree. It's less forgiving in a lot of ways, but it nails that kind of the Dark Souls precision and gets that kind of Chambara samurai movie stuff going, and then it adds in that Tenshu grappling hook and they finally figured out a way to do that grappling hook idea without making it feel awkward and slow.
Yeah, it feels great.
It's just really good all through it. And you've got that fear of like, what the hell is this boss going to be? I don't know if I can do this. And then every once in a while you do it in the first try, and it's like you're on top of the world. It's great.
Yeah, I think my only dig at this game is the visuals. The graphics are not amazing. They're serviceable, but
I think playing it on PC makes a difference on that.
Does it?
Like playing on PC, it's very sharp.
Okay.
It's not. You're not going to mistake it for like a next-gen game or anything, but the details on the character models are much sharper and easier to pick out on PC. I think I also played on PS4, and you're right, it has a muddiness to it on PS4 that like it's just not there on the PC. But one or the other, I do like the art style, but I think you're right that the PS4 version is a little.
It's not winning best graphics in 2019.
No, yeah. but it feels really good. So.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, my pick for best action adventure is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. You mix Star Wars and Metroid, I'm there.
And Dark Souls.
Although...
And Sekiro. I mean, there's Sekiro influence
there's a little
here.
bit of... But to me, it's the perfect amount of that stuff. It's not, like, overwhelmingly difficult. I never felt like I wanted to quit or give up playing this game. And I think a big part of it, too, is that there's other stuff to do. You don't necessarily have to. You can always go back to another area you were in before, now that you've got a new ability and unlock a new part of that area. You're never kind of trapped into this place where you're like, I have to beat this guy or I can't move forward. I think that helped a little bit with keeping me from getting frustrated. But also, it's like you got the traversal stuff that you don't normally have in those types of games. You got Star Wars. I think to me the weakest part of this game was the story, and the story's still pretty great.
Story's hamstrung by the setting. Like you can't
only
really
do so much.
Solve anything because you have to have the original trilogy happen, so you can't like fix the galaxy. But you can tell a smaller scale story, and it works for the most part. The characters are good.
BD1, I freaking love. Like, people ask me like what I wanted for Christmas, and I can't think of anything. Like,
Star Wars is 2 for 2 on the cute sidekick characters.
Yeah.
Between this BD1 and Baby Yoda, I think we need a team up series,
like a cartoon series or something.
Yeah.
But beyond that, just the game's design, the combat maybe wasn't 100% there.
No, I gotta say, playing Sekiro again, like, really drove home how mushy this is in comparison. Because it was, but I'm like, oh, it's okay. But like going back to like, oh, no wonder. Like part of the reason this game can feel hard is that it just doesn't snap the way Sekiro does.
It's true.
Which is like, I mean, if everyone could do it, everyone would do it. It's not easy to do that. I think they can. Rumor was today, like some stuff came out that said like they're already working on the sequel.
Oh,
so
it seems to be selling really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fastest selling Star Wars game EA's ever put out. I don't know how much of a compliment that is. I think Battlefront did sell pretty well. The first one,
it did. Both of them sold pretty well.
Yeah, but more of this would be great, and it's especially great also because it
they're going to get better at it as they go.
Oh, and also because it's the kind of game that EA for years has said doesn't sell and isn't worth it.
Right, yeah.
And here it is.
And here it is. Totally worth it. I really, really enjoyed this game. And obviously, I am a big Star Wars fan, and that helps. But I think objectively, this game is the epitome of the action adventure. I mean, it is. That is the exactly what you do. It's action, and then you're searching around looking for clues. They're scanning. I mean,
It has all the pieces. I would have been more bullish on it if it wasn't quite so rough around all the edges.
Yeah, I didn't have as many issues as a lot of people did with this game.
No, I don't think I did either.
It
just clearly feels like I think it needed 6 to 8 more months in the oven.
I would agree with that. Yep.
But what's there is real good, and I will go back and play it again when I have the time. No question. It is the best lightsaber combat ever done. Which is not saying anything really, but they nailed it. They nailed that. They nailed how powerful the blasters should feel, and how when that stormtrooper is shooting at you like that, you feel like those things will kill you if they hit you.
Yeah.
So
they're laser beams.
It's very well done in that regard.
You're right though. It does create an accurate sense of danger in the Star Wars universe. Like you fear the things you should absolutely fear.
And it is the first use of AT-AT instead of AT-AT in universe in 15 years in Star Wars.
Wait, they called it an AT-AT?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
At one point, when he steals the right before this, actually, when he steals the walker and comes in, and Forrest Whitaker is like, well, why should we trust you? He's like, well, I brought you an AT-AT.
I missed that somehow.
I've
always called it AT-AT.
Yeah, well, everyone has, because that's what they're called. But then there was this whole thing where they're like, no, they're AT-ATs.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, they're AT-AT. Like, I had an argument with that with Lucasfilm at one point when I was making that show right before Force Awakens came out. Where I had an AT-AT thing in the script, and they're like, oh, it's an AT-AT. I'm like, no, it's not. Here's this commercial for the toy from 1981 where they say AT-AT 15 times so you remember what it's called. Yeah. Like, well, no, it's an AT-AT. No. I'm like, so I just cut it out of the script because I refuse to say AT-AT. But yeah, Cal calls it an AT-AT, and like I will love Cal regardless of anything else that character does forever because he brought that back.
All right.
And I haven't seen Vince or Stig since this came out, but I need to ask them like who put that in.
Yep.
Who put AT-AT in and wouldn't take it out?
We'll ask them at PAX Party this year at E3. Yeah. Next up, Best Platformer. This is one of those categories that comes and goes in our Game of the Year awards because some years there just aren't enough of them. Some years there are 8,000 indie platformers that come out in 12 months. This year was a pretty slow year, but there were enough games for us to pick winners. Matt, what was your pick for Best Platformer?
I went with Super Mario Maker 2.
Hard to argue against that.
This was honestly, this is the only platformer I particularly liked this year.
Yeah, interesting.
Because I didn't play Yoshi's Crafted World because I hate Yoshi. I didn't play the ukulele game.
The Impossible Lair.
Yeah, I can't remember anything else I really played platform-wise.
It was not a big year for platforming.
No. So I went with this kind of by default, but also because I did like it. It didn't capture me the way the first one did, probably because like obviously it's more of an update.
Because it should have just been like an expansion to the first game.
Much,
let's be honest.
But I mean, the first game's trapped on the Wii U, so you got to do what you got to do.
Yep.
I still just load it up and play some levels once in a while. I guess it's kind of a standard go-to, like in the way that you say like you play a round of Call of Duty whenever you have 5 minutes. Like this is kind of my quick 5-minute game. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think this game needs me to stand for it. Really,
it's a known quantity.
Yeah,
either you love it or you're indifferent.
And the updates have been good. The adding Link as a power up and the Zelda elements. I think that's really cool.
It makes me wonder if we'll ever get like a Zelda maker though.
Yeah, I mean, I suck at them, so but the videos on YouTube are neat.
I honestly spend more time watching videos of people playing the levels in this game than playing the game.
Yeah, I probably have spent more time watching Patrick Klepek play this than I've actually played it. That's true.
Funny.
But
I just don't have the patience to get through some of those levels, but I like watching other people torture themselves trying to do it. So there you go, Super Mario Galaxy. Super Mario Maker 2 for
you
Matt.
Wish.
Yeah, I do wish. That would have been an easy pick. Super Mario Galaxy 3, done. My pick for Best Platformer is a game that Matt just mentioned, Yoshi's Crafted World. I did play this all the way to the end.
I have an irrational hatred of Yoshi. Like, I don't excuse it at all. It's just
I don't think it's that irrational. In fact, Jeff Gerstmann hates Yoshi more than you do. I guarantee it. Like, he hates Yoshi. And you talk to him, he won't really give you a reason. He's like, I just hate him. He's just dumb. I hate him. Like, it's funny.
I don't know why. Like, he's a dinosaur. He's from my favorite Mario game, Mario World. Like, I don't know why I hate him, but I do.
I get why you hate him. He's not a great character. He just isn't. Like, his functionality is cool. The fact that he can sort of eat things and, use them as ammunition, that is kind of a cool concept or a cool tweak. But otherwise, he's not really that great of a character, in my opinion. I mean, maybe there's like a Yoshi fan club out there. I don't know.
There are hardcore Yoshi fans out there. I've seen it.
Well, I didn't enjoy this game because it starred 8,000 Yoshis or even just one Yoshi. I really liked it because it does something different. It has this weird perspective shifting mechanic that happens in the game and it's used in myriad ways and to creative effect. There's lots of times where you just kind of stumble upon rooms because there's like a cardboard cutout standing in front of you, and you're just kind of like got Yoshi behind it, and you're kind of wiggling around. Next thing you know, you find this new pathway that can take you somewhere completely different. You're like, oh, that's how I get to that thing that I could see that I couldn't figure out how to get to. The other part of it, too, is that there are some really challenging platforming sections in this game. The game itself isn't that difficult. It's pretty forgiving as far as like checkpoints and lives and things like that and earning extra lives. But there are definitely parts of this game where I had to play them over and over and over again just to complete them. Now, I never ran out of lives and, lost a bunch of progress or anything like that, but there's some serious platforming in this game as well. I think a lot of people may look at this game and like, oh, it's more like an adventure game where you're tossing Yoshi's eggs around. That's really not the case at all. It's a good mix of everything, of adventuring, sort of the whole perspective shift, and challenging platforming, for sure. And some pretty good combat as well, mixed in there with the platforming. So it was not an amazing year for platformers in general in 2019, but to me, this game was head and shoulders above the rest.
I hate Yoshi.
I do too.
I hate the way he stands. I hate the little shell on his back. Like, I don't know why. I hate how his nose bounces when he talks.
I hate how he doesn't really have like a tail.
Yeah, I don't.
I hear you.
I don't know what it's completely irrational. I don't know what lizard brain thing that triggers in me, but like I hate Yoshi.
All right. Well, we'll move on.
I don't even like looking at this footage. Get it off. Get it off the screen. Jesus.
All right, next up, Best Strategy Game. This is another category where we both picked the same exact game, and that is Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Yes.
One of the
It was a good year for strategy games.
It was a good year. It was not an easy category to pick. This is one of like the game. This is like the People's Choice Game of the Year for the Game Awards.
And like Fallen Order came in second, I think.
Yeah, which wasn't even considered.
It didn't make the the cutoff, but the fans
fans still wanted to rally around it. Look, Nintendo fans are crazy, so it doesn't surprise me that a bunch of Nintendo fans voted for.
Although I thought Smash Brothers would win.
Yeah, that was surprising.
I thought the Smash community would rally, but it was
Fire
Emblem.
It was the Fire Emblem community, which I didn't even know there was a big Fire Emblem community in the first place.
You need to be on Twitter more.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think I really do need to be on Twitter more. I think I'm on there just enough.
But it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, we both love this game.
Yeah.
I would never consider it for Game of the Year. I'll say that. But it was a good strategy game. I mean, as far as production values are concerned, the actual depth of the battle system and the combat, the story was great. The only real knock I have against it is that the production values are here and there.
They're a little switchy.
Yeah, they are. It's doing its best. It's doing all she can. But
I mean, it's still pretty good looking for a Fire Emblem game.
Well, the anime stuff looks amazing.
They've been on handheld for a long time. I don't think they've ever quite topped the old hand-drawn 2D animations.
I agree.
Of the combat.
Yep.
I don't think they're ever going to match that.
It was great to see a lot of these characters in this world, though, at that level of fidelity, after it being sort of a handheld franchise after all this time. So it was good to see. Mm-hmm. I mean, this game was kind of in development hell. Like, Intelligent Systems kind of bailed on it, and they had to get help. I can't remember what studio came in to help them finish. It may have been like Koei Tecmo or something.
It was Koei, yeah.
Yeah.
Koei Tecmo helped. The Dynasty Warriors guys came in.
Well, it worked,
Yeah.
Intelligent Systems is.
I think it uses the same engine.
Oh, really?
As Fire Emblem Warriors.
Oh, okay. That makes sense, too. But again, this is also a game that you can play multiple times because you can choose a different school to join, and it drastically changes how the game is played.
Team up with different characters. And all this. Yeah.
Build your characters differently. I was a Blue Lion.
But I went with the red. What are they? Red Eagles?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But you can go back and play as any of the different factions, and it changes the story and like who you fight in certain skirmishes. It was a little too easy.
It was pretty easy.
Like a lot of Nintendo games, though, to be honest. Like, I just walked through Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like, it was nothing.
Yeah, but the Pokemon base game is always that. It's the post game that's the challenge.
Yeah. This game was easy,
This was pretty... I thought this was pretty easy for Fire Emblem.
Yeah. And you could turn off permadeath, too, if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, that's been true.
In hindsight, maybe I should have left it on.
That's been true of,
to make it more challenging.
Most of the Fire Emblems for, like, 5 or 6 of these. There have been several of them.
Yeah.
Casual mode is not a new thing here.
No, but... Maybe in hindsight, I shouldn't have used it. I should have.
I mean, casual mode doesn't make it any harder to die, easier to die or anything.
Yeah.
It just means that if you do die, I mean, I didn't have anyone die. I don't think the whole time, except like one. I think maybe one rando, like weird, like one of the weird little axe dudes who never became anything of note. I think died early on.
I had a couple characters die, but it wasn't that big a deal. Again, it was really easy, but it was great to see this IP in 3D and pretty well imagined. The anime in it was great. I wish there was more of it. But overall, I mean, then you have all the school mechanic. Like, watching this B-roll is bringing back a lot of the memories of this game, and it is a very deep game with a lot of different systems.
I definitely understand why so many Harry Potter fans like it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is kind of Harry Potter. This strategy,
it's like it's like Hogwarts, the combat academy, basically.
Yeah. But a great strategy game. Did you have any other picks that you want to mention? Because we both picked the same
probably
one.
like second place for me would be Three Kingdoms, Total War Three Kingdoms.
Yeah.
The Dynasty Warriors Total War game.
Yep.
Fire Emblem is a much like lighter and easier to sort of like flow along with game. Total War requires a lot more thought.
I think it's just more fun, honestly. Yeah. Total War is a much more rigid, almost like simulation of...
Yeah, but Total War is probably the best representation of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story I've seen.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
It just gets into it really well. You just have to have the patience to play a Total War game.
Yep, and it does take patience. And it takes a long time to learn how to play those games. I tried Three Kingdoms, and I didn't get very far before I was like, this is just too much.
No, I mean, I played it back when right around after it came out, I think, and I've kind of gone back to it periodically. This game I played for like 80 hours straight when it came. I mean, Fire Emblem I played.
I think my final clock was like 65 hours for Fire Emblem or something. I mean, if you're going to stick with a game that long, it's pretty good.
It's probably good.
Yep. Next up, best fighting game. Once again, a category that both you and I agree on, and the winner is Mortal Kombat 11. Not an
almost by default.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that because Mortal Kombat 11 is great. Yeah. It's a great fighting game. It deserves Fighting Game of the Year, but you're right.
There was just no competition.
It didn't face a lot of
competition.
The
only other game I would even consider in the same bracket would probably be Samurai Showdown.
Yep, that was my other consideration.
Just because of how different it is.
And the reason I didn't go with Samurai Showdown over Mortal Kombat 11, well, there's a million reasons, honestly. Like, you're right, it is a different kind of a fighting style for a fighting game. That part of it I like, but the production values are really low in that game.
Mortal Kombat's just got more of a total package.
It just has everything. I mean, it's just... It's almost overwhelming how much content there is in Mortal Kombat.
NetherRealm has pretty much mastered, between this and the Injustice games, has pretty much mastered a fighting game that's worth $60.
Yep. I'd like to see what can topple NetherRealm's game. So whenever the next one comes out in 2 years, like what will it take?
I don't know.
From a fighting franchise to best what NetherRealm is doing. I mean,
you mean like other than NetherRealm?
Right.
The competition?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you could like expand Street Fighter 6 out to have this kind of like level of, but I don't know if Capcom's up for that. You know what I mean, we've
seen them try to do story modes.
I can see them do that. And like the smart thing about Mortal Kombat is they've always built it around the narrative to some degree, partly because it's based on, you know, old kung fu movies. Yeah. Like, you know, it has a narrative built into it because it comes from that sort of pulp schlock of the 70s that, like, you know, that's all drawn from, and also kind of the Big Trouble in Little China aspect. And so you can kind of like do just like a crazy over the top kind of gods and monsters story out of it. Same with like how why Injustice works. Injustice comes from DC Comics, so you can kind of just tell a DC comic story, and then by the fact they've set it into an alternate universe means they can play in that world however they want and make Superman evil and kill all these characters off, and it doesn't matter because it's not the real DC universe, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of also I think where their strength is, where like NetherRealms is not afraid to tell this R-rated like death dealing story where anything can happen and anyone can get killed off. It's kind of got a Game of Thrones element to it.
And not just tell tell it very well with extremely high production values. Like, I just don't see...
Like, they resemble, like, the best of, like, the DC animated direct-to-DVD movies.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I just...
They're good.
Looking down the road, it's just hard for me to see another studio.
I don't think any other studio making fighting games has been built to do what NetherRealm does.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like no other fighting game studio has a narrative team as robust as these guys. And like the closest I think you get is probably like BlazBlue.
Yeah.
Which is very repetitive, not on the same level, but it does have the depth of lore. But
that's important.
It doesn't have the production value, obviously.
Even if NetherRealm made the next Street Fighter game, let's say Capcom just gives it to them and says, you're making the next Street Fighter, I still don't think it would be as good as what NetherRealm is doing already because of what you said, the lore in the universe. Like, Street Fighter is just this very kind of flimsy, flim-flam like concept.
Street Fighter has built out the characters, but they haven't built out the world or the premise enough to really matter. And like it's all kind of set around the idea of the Street Fighter tournament.
Yeah.
And sort of the fairly lackluster idea of psycho power or sin or whatever Bison's organization is this time around, or Shadowloo stuff. Whereas this is like gods and demons and interdimensional monsters fighting for the control of reality. I mean, the stakes are just bigger on this.
It's a blank canvas.
And your main characters are kind of ethereal gods and Shaolin monks and ninjas. And like, what's your main character in Street Fighter? A guy who walks around looking for fighting tournaments to go in. It's like, and like, who else is your main? You don't focus on Ryu. There's nothing else.
When Street Fighter 2 came out, that one day, hey, we maybe games are going to be insane. And we're going to need to have some actual story and lore.
Yeah. Well, here's actually, who the only real competition in terms of that sort of presentation probably is, and I didn't think of it because I don't care about the series very much, was Tekken.
Yeah.
Tekken 7 actually did make some strides towards this level.
No, you're right. It's trying at least.
A Tekken 8 could potentially be like Mortal Kombat 10 territory.
Yeah, but they're going to be playing catch-up for
a long time. They're going to be playing catch-up for a long time,
yeah. And just a note as well, people may be wondering, like, where's Super Smash Brothers? Well, for us, Super Smash Brothers was in the awards last year.
Yeah, they made it last year.
Last year they made it for us, so they were not under consideration.
We don't cut stuff off halfway through November.
But I'll be perfectly honest with you. Even if Smash was in this year, I would still give.
No, I would. I would also pick Mortal Kombat over Smash.
Yep.
I like Smash, but it didn't set my world on fire. Nothing really has since Melee in that series, frankly.
Yep. All right. Up next, best driving game. So we mentioned earlier that Matt decided to abstain from one of the categories in our awards today.
I got nothing.
And this is the category that Matt has decided to abstain from.
I think I only played one racing game this year, and it was Need for Speed Heat, and I refused to give that an award. So
I played of the racing games. I played a lot. I played a lot of Need for Speed Heat. I played a lot of Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, and then just recently, I finally got to play this game, which is F1 2019. And I just want to say, if there are any PR people out there watching this show or listening to this show on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, it is very smart to reach out to journalists at the end of the year and ask them if they want to play your game for Game of the Year consideration, because that's what happened with this game. And here it is. SIFTD's driving game of the year for 2019, F1 2019. I had not played an F1 game. I don't even know how long it's been. Probably 10, 12 years or something like that since I played an F1 game. And so the last thing I remembered about playing an F1 game is that it was insanely difficult and hard. This game, you can tell that Codemasters over time has figured out that a lot of people have been intimidated by F1 games and made... Here's the thing, though. They didn't make it a casual F1 game. They made it a game that casuals can jump into and play and have fun with, but you can also turn all that stuff off and just go straight sim. I was also impressed with the story mode in this, which I was shocked by because, again, the last F1 story mode I played was a joke. It was basically 2 rooms. One was like the inside where you won, and the other was out by your trailer. And the entire story played out in those 2 settings. That has completely changed. They have dove headfirst into esports with this, and it's all just baked into the game. I'm not an esports guy, but I could see where people playing this it would be very easy for them to get into it and then suddenly be hooked. And next thing you know, you're a part of the F1 esports community. So this was a very pleasant surprise to me. Again, I thank the PR person who sent it to me because it deserves Driving Game of the Year. And now that I've played it, I was able to give it Driving Game of the Year.
Well, I'll take your word for that.
Yep. You're not going to try it yourself? Is that what you're saying, Matt?
I mean, maybe one day if it's like $9 or something.
Well, it might be. They're not big sellers, the F1 games in general. Definitely not in the US.
I also don't care about F1 racing. Like Formula is not interesting to me, really. I'm not a F1 person. I'm not a NASCAR person. I'm more of a, exotic or street racing fan. Gran Turismo based stuff, basically.
Yeah.
is my thing I'm interested in.
My dad was a big F1 fan, so I was kind of forced to watch it growing up, like on the weekends.
Like Le Mans 24 Hour is interesting to me.
That's insane. That race is nuts.
I played that one, that Dreamcast game.
Literally, you could do the 24-hour race.
We did that. We had tag teams like, it was 20 for 24 hours.
What place did you finish in?
I don't remember.
No?
Not first.
Yeah, I bet.
But like that was Melbourne House, man. Melbourne House was a great studio.
They made
some really good stuff.
They really did back in the day. Yep. Did they make the driver game, the good one?
I think they did, and I think they also made the Transformers Armada game.
I think you're right.
Which was really good.
Yeah. Are they still around even?
I don't know.
Were they
got shut down. They were absorbed or
something?
shut down or something because they were through. I think they were through. Were they THQ?
I don't know.
That would be a nice retro story if somebody wanted to do on like what happened to Melbourne House. Melbourne House was one of the around the Dreamcast era. They were one of the top developers.
They were kind of legendary.
They were great.
It's crazy to think about. Next up, best game as a service, a category we've been forced to include in our awards over the last couple of years because it's a thing now in gaming.
I think your computer crashed.
Did it crash? I don't know.
It won't wake up.
Yeah, it won't wake up. You're right.
It's like an Evanescence song over here.
Well, the good news is I don't think I need it, honestly.
Then you won't see the chat.
Yeah, that is a problem.
You'll need it by the end.
Oh, you're right. That's a good point. I don't know what happened. It just turned off.
It just stopped.
It just
weird.
Shut down, and it won't wake up. Spacebar, mouse, nothing. Even hitting the power button, it won't turn on. Anyway, best game as a service. For those of you who are wondering, this is basically games that just continue to live on. They released the base version of it, and they just keep adding to it with DLC and season passes and new content. I think by now everyone knows what a GAS is. Matt, what's your pick for best game as a service for 2019?
My pick is Final Fantasy XIV. So this is kind of a nod to some degree in the sense that Shadowbringers is reputed by many who played it to be one of the best things that came out this year. I did not get to play it because it's 200 some hours into this game. And I didn't want to do the thing where you skip the whole game and start it like without knowing what the hell you're doing because that's just not how I roll. But what I have played like close to 100 hours. I'm getting there. Like I'll get there eventually. When I do get to play Shadowbringers, we will talk about it on the show. But whenever that happens next year sometime. But what I have played of it, I really liked, and I appreciated kind of what they were doing.
I don't think you're alone, man.
And
everybody's been talking about this game this year, out of nowhere. I mean, it's been out for what, like 5
several
years now?
And that's not even including like the part where they shut it down and remade it from the ground up.
Right.
And then so I think I had to give it a nod for just sort of being a very pleasant surprise in terms of like how much fun I'm having playing a Final Fantasy game again for the first time probably since 12.
Yeah.
I mean, I am not impressed with the direction Final Fantasy has gone in pretty much since 10. With the 12 is a high point, but beyond that, I haven't really liked anything they've done. This feels like Final Fantasy. This feels like it's because you don't really need other players much except for like instance dungeons, which you sort of join a queue and join up that way. That was a hard crash.
Yeah, my PC had just popped back up. It basically had got
the unhappy face and the blue screen and everything. Wow.
I've never seen that. That's a blue screen of death on Windows 10.
Yeah,
never seen that before.
And So I just wanted to kind of give it a nod because I haven't had a lot of like good games as a service experiences this year. And as a matter of fact, this wasn't one either because if you buy this on Steam,
I was a little puzzled by
you have to go through all. But that's not the game's fault. That's Square's fault.
But this is best game as a service. So doesn't the service part of it tie into it a little bit?
Not really, because what they're doing to give you what they're giving you in the game as the service is very good. The problem is that Square, as a whole, as a company, is terrible about like all their interface, because this is also the same interface you have to deal with if you're on Final Fantasy 11 and any of their other stuff that involves this subscription thing. It's just very confused and very user unintuitive, and they're not helpful on the phone afterwards.
Well, the crazy thing was it was nominated for like best community support at the Game Awards.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And I was remembering what you were telling me about.
I've lost $45 to this game into the ether because
I was like, wait a minute. I thought it's like the worst service.
It was. It's the worst customer service of any game-related thing I've had, not just this year, probably the last 5 years. It's terrible. Because it's like all in the same account, but like there's different service accounts under that account, and one of the service accounts by default is your free trial, and then one of the service accounts is your Steam thing, and when you go to buy the subscription or whatever, it just like defaults to the first one, which is your free account, and then like unless you know all ahead of time, it doesn't even check with you. It's just a drop down menu, and it doesn't check with you and say, hey, make sure you're putting this on which account it is. It just lets you do the charge, and there's no way to reverse it.
Yeah, that's bad.
And then you talk to them, and you're like, hey, can you just move I meant to buy it on this and not that, can you just move it over to this? And they're like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, I think you can, and you just won't. So not pleased with that, but that's not the game's fault. The developers of the game didn't make that.
So you're saying
happen.
The game itself, as far as having ongoing content, is your pick for?
Yeah, it's integrating cool things, integrating Nier. And, they put a Nier dungeon up.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a lot of like nice little references to things and fun costumes you can get, not always paid. Like you can earn them in the game. So yeah, I think it's and it feels good to play. You can play with mouse and keyboard or with a controller. Works just fine on both. I generally do play with a controller because it doesn't matter. It's an MMO. So yeah, I've enjoyed my time with it. I just haven't had enough time to get to the part that everybody says is a Game of the Year contender. So we'll see.
Okay.
But I wanted to give it an acknowledgement of some kind.
I have a feeling my pick is most definitely going to surprise some people. My choice for the best game as a service for 2019 is Fortnite. I never thought I would, if you talked to me in January, I never would have dreamed. I probably would have guessed the Division 2 or something like that would have been my pick, but no. And it's not even that I don't even really like Fortnite. I'll just be perfectly honest with you. I jumped back in this year with the new season to play it and check in on it. And I'm glad I did because it made me realize that it is the best game as a service. Because, one, I don't think there's ever going to be a Fortnite 2. It's like I look at all these other games as a service and I'm like, oh, we already have a Division 2. We already have a Destiny 2. I don't think there's going to be a Fortnite 2 because they have done such an amazing job of keeping the players engaged.
And they seem to be really willing to just straight up reinvent it when they have to and not
literally they'll suck the whole world into a black hole and just start over. Like no game does that. The other part of it too is that, and Jeff Keighley touched on this a little bit on the Game Awards, is what Epic is doing with Fortnite is unlike anything any other publisher is doing with a game as a service, meaning these events that happen in-game for, in some cases, millions of people. This, Matt, is going to be huge going forward. It is going to be a gigantic revenue driver for Epic Games and any other publisher that does it. Because you can sell themed events inside your game as if they're an event that happens in the real world.
Now, hopefully, it works better in the future.
Because the Star Wars thing this weekend was pretty much a disaster.
Yeah.
But like the concert that they did, that
concert was good.
That 10 million people watched.
The kaiju battle was great.
Yeah. Like, again, they're trailblazing. Fortnite was a trailblazer when it started as this battle royale thing.
Yeah, I hope whoever thought of that got a big raise.
Seriously, because I mean, that is going to generate literally like $1 billion when it's all said and done, doing in-game events in Fortnite. And that, again, I'm kind of a person who, when we do these awards,
they're going to be able to pick and choose.
Yeah, they're going to be able to like pit people against each other to be like, well, that weekend is booked. And so is offering us $1 million, whatever. What are you going to offer us? Like, It is genius. And I don't think it'll be long until other games start doing it, but I would also argue that maybe Fortnite is the only game that can really pull it off.
Yeah. I mean, I almost reinstalled it to play with the lightsabers this week.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, they're always rolling content into the game that maybe the last 5 you didn't care about, but then that 6th one shows up, and it's something you absolutely care about. And either you go back into the world and you play it, or you at least ponder, like, reinstalling it or whatever. Again, I'm not the world's biggest Fortnite fan, but to me, it's just really hard to deny that it's not dominating this space right now. It
well, and also, like, no, everyone else looks like they're standing still.
Yeah. I mean, look at it, even Apex Legends.
Has nothing
it's
compared
like,
to it.
Its updates are so infrequent, and when they do happen, they're insignificant. Like, to me, this category...
Where are the Titans?
Yeah, exactly. So
you have what you need.
I get it.
A lot of
people hate this game. They feel like maybe it's ruining gaming or it's dragging away their hardcore gamer friends into casual land. I get all that.
Their children won't stop playing it.
Yeah. But there's just no denying that Epic is doing this better than anyone else right now. It's just the way it is. All right. Next up, best platform. So this is where we pick what platform. PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Switch, mobile, whatever, VR. What platform was the best in 2019? PlayStation 4 has won this every year.
I won.
Did Xbox win once?
I picked PC once.
PC once. But for me, I think it's been a straight flush since SIFTD launched for PS4. That changes this year. And we both picked the same platform, and that platform is Switch. Not even close.
No. Like, there's been nothing comparable to the consistency of the Switch this year.
I mean, software
at least
output,
once a month, something worth playing.
And, something good worth playing. The first-party output this year has been the best so far for Switch, without a doubt. We didn't get the big blockbusters like a Mario or a Zelda, but this is where all the B-level guys started filling in.
We got something of quality, of noteworthy quality every time.
And they were all good. That's the thing. Like, every first-party release has been, at the very least, good. And most of them have been great.
Even the gimmicky bullshit fitness game was pretty good.
Yeah, still pretty damn good. And you start thinking about, they launched the Switch Lite this year, which opens up the platform to people who can only afford to spend $200 on it. So it's been a stellar year for Nintendo. I think the other thing for me, too, is that this is usually the period where we see Nintendo starting to slack off. Yep. This is where you start to see software releases shrink for Nintendo's platform.
I think instead you're seeing the dividends of
one platform
no longer having the 3DS to support.
Yep. And it's like Bravely Default 2. I made fun of its visuals, but that game would have been on 3DS if the Switch wasn't there. So we are absolutely getting games on Switch that we normally would have got on whatever other handheld Nintendo had at the time, and it makes a huge difference for Nintendo's software library for the platform. It's just been great. Like, it's probably Nintendo's best console ever.
Maybe.
It's
not done yet.
It's not. And I struggle to think of a better one, honestly. Like, it has to be either the NES or the SNES.
It'd be the SNES or the GameCube for me.
Oh, really? You put GameCube up there, huh?
It's going to lean real hard on how good Metroid Prime 4 is. Metroid kind of makes or breaks a Nintendo system for me most
Understandable. It's one of its biggest franchises. And in honesty, the only big franchise we have yet to get on Switch. That just shows you the kind of work that Nintendo's been doing on this platform. We're going to get a second Zelda here probably within 12 months' time.
Yep. For the first time since the Wii.
Yeah.
Only 2 systems ago, but
yeah. Well, that's 10 years in video game time. That's how it works. So
I mean, we got multiples on Wii U, but they were remastered. So
yeah, this was an easy pick for me. Like I think I knew this back in like June. This Switch was going to win platform of the year.
There just wasn't anything else on the schedule.
Yeah, especially once stuff started falling out for the other platforms and getting pushed back to 2020, it just opened up the pathway for Switch. And not that I'm saying that's why it won. It probably would have won anyway because Nintendo just had an absolutely incredible year. So congratulations to Nintendo with Switch. Very easily earned this award for 2019. Next up, Best Story. It's not very often that we reward 2 different games with Best RPG and Best Story. Usually they're intertwined, but not always, but usually they are. And this year, that was the case because we both have the same winner, and that's Disco Elysium. Yeah. It's, again, that's a no-brainer.
It's not, there are no other contenders.
No.
Really.
Like when I said earlier, like these awards for me were either obvious or splitting hairs.
Yeah.
This was one of the obvious ones. Like, and I still haven't even finished it. So the story may even get better as it goes. Like as I get deeper into the game. I wish I could take this with me over the holidays.
Yeah, I understand that.
I wish I could take it with me on my flights to and from the East Coast.
And I never say this would be good on the Switch.
It would be. Because it's not really all
It's
that
not graphically intensive.
Yeah, and it's not even about that.
It's not Twitch-based.
Yep.
You could play it at your leisure. It'd be a good game to have on a plane.
Yep, absolutely. That's what I wish. I wish when I fly out here in 2 days that I had this on my Switch to play. And I have a feeling that this game is only going to grow in stature as it does reach more platforms. I know people may watch these awards right now and they're like, what's Matt and Shane on about this Disco Elysium crap? Well, I have a feeling in a year or two's time they're going to be like, oh.
Yeah, once this hits consoles, you're going to start to see people make, oh, I get it.
Yep,
I see.
they'll see. So the story.
Microsoft, put this on Game Pass immediately.
Yeah.
Get this out there.
Yeah. That would be
get it
idea.
in people's hands. That's all you need to do.
Yep. Great story, great adventure, great role playing.
Very funny.
Yeah. It's all that.
Very funny, very smart.
Yep. Next up, one of my favorite categories from our Game of the Year awards every year. This category is called Future Legend. And this is where we pick a game that maybe flew under the radar a little bit. It doesn't have to. But most importantly, that we think decades from now, people are still going to point to and say, that was a great game. Maybe they say that was a great game that was underappreciated, but most importantly, they're going to say, even decades from now, that was a great game. Matt, what is your pick?
My pick is Sekiro, which I don't think flew under the radar too much.
Yeah.
At the very least, it won the Game Award for Game of the Year. But I don't think it was it wasn't a massive Zelda level hit or anything. But my main reason for thinking it's going to be a future legend is I think this game is going to inform sword combat for decades to come. And I think you already saw it with Fallen Order, which was basically going off what we knew about the combat in that game from pre-release stuff. There is really no better feeling sword combat in games, I don't think, at least in terms of trading blows. Like, I think there's people that would say Dark Souls is a little better because the hitboxes are more accurate. But in terms of like two people with swords trying to fight through each other's defense and get that opening to get that kill, there's nothing else like this game. The give and take is amazing. And I think in the same way like The Witcher 3 you're starting to see that influence like how stories are told in open worlds and how RPGs treat side quests. Sekiro is just going to quietly influence everyone who makes a game with a sword in it for years. So I think that's why I pick it. I also think games this year are a little light on the ground in terms of future legend status.
Agreed.
It was hard to think of one that I really felt was going to be that, and I think this is actually kind of a weak pick in some ways because it's more about influencing a particular gameplay mechanic rather than the whole package. But it's the best I got.
Okay. My pick for future legend is a game that I've been championing for the last month and a half, and that game is Luigi's Mansion 3. I feel like this game has just been released and just forgotten about. I think it won like Best Family Game at the Game Awards or something like that, which obviously it should have won. I also feel that it's going to be kind of a victim of what we were talking about earlier, where the Switch is just having one hell of a year and one a hell of the last 2 years or whatever. So many great first-party games that's released for Switch that I feel like this one is just going to slip through the cracks for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge mistake. It is some of the most fun that I had playing a game in 2019. And the other thing I would say about it is that its visuals are never going to age. This game's never going to look old.
Yeah, this is going to be like the way Wind Waker was on the GameCube,
it's
where
timeless.
people just point at it and say, look, it still looks great.
It still looks great. I mean, even if you look at the original Luigi's Mansion for GameCube, other than the fact that it's like in 4:3 aspect ratio, it still looks great. But this destroys it. Like, after I played this, I was like, man, like, is this that much better? Oh, yes, it's that much better looking than the original game. I've already, like, gushed over this game on GameFace several times. I don't need to sort of beat that drum more, but I just wanted to give more perspective on why I think it's going to be a future legend, because I think this is one of those games that people are going to go back to decades from now and be like, hot damn, why didn't people talk more about this game when it came out? And I think a big reason why is because the Switch is just so damn awesome and has so many great games already. So I
also think this game is a lot of people look at this game and think it shouldn't be full price.
Oh, really?
Which is weird. But
why?
Because there's a thing with Luigi's Mansion where people feel like it's probably going to be too short, which I don't think this one is.
The first one absolutely was.
The first one was, and the other thing, of course, is the previous one was a handheld game, and there's sort of a feeling like, oh, is this just a handheld game stuck on the Switch?
Yeah.
Which as soon as you play it, you know it's not, but you got to spend that $60 first.
Yeah, or just listen to us telling you that it's worth the $60. That's kind of what we're here for, at least. But I love this game. It's one of my favorite games of the year. You have to wait here about 30 or 40 minutes to find out if I give it Game of the Year. But, yeah, one of the best of the year. I don't think a lot of people are talking about it or playing it. And I think, ultimately, the test of time will...
Yeah, you could do worse than to stick this one on your Christmas list.
I would absolutely... If you haven't bought this, I absolutely tell you to put this on your Christmas list and let somebody else buy it for you. You will thank me when we come back in 2020. All right, next up, most pleasant surprise. This category is always interesting because you can take it anywhere. It can be anything. It could be a game that you didn't think was going to be as good as it ended up being. It could be something that a company did that you were pleasantly surprised by. It could be yourself. Maybe you've changed your approach with certain genres, or you like things now that you didn't like. What's your pick, Matt, for most pleasant surprise of 2019?
My pick is Untitled Goose Game. I didn't think this was good enough to kind of hit the best of stuff overall, but I did think it was a genuinely charming. Honestly, I probably picked it because you have pleasant in the name of this category, and that is kind of the word I associate the most with this game. It was pleasant. It was wonderfully fun to play a terrible goose, just thoroughly harassing a bunch of poor English people.
Do you want that beaker game that was shown at the Game Awards?
Not really. No, I know that's a darling and all, but I've never been a huge beaker fan. I think the goose is fine the way it is.
Yeah, it's kind of perfect all on its own, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, if you give me a Statler and Waldorf heckling simulator, now you got my attention.
That was pretty clever, though, and I like that they actually built kind of the game and put beaker in there. It's pretty sweet.
Oh yeah, it was very impressive production value. But yeah, I this was kind of a lark. I was like, oh, everybody's talking about this game. I guess I'll play it before the show comes on. It's like, yeah, I played through the whole damn thing, right in one sitting. It's not that long, but it was it's charming, and
I laughed out loud,
very funny,
a lot at this game.
Yeah. I know people are kind of sick of it to some degree, and I go, oh, it's all a meme thing, and people just like it because it's memes or whatever. But it's like, you know what? No, it's really pretty much that good.
Yeah, it is.
There's just other stuff that I liked better, or spoke to me more. I felt were more robust game experiences.
Yeah, it's not a particularly deep game, but it moves you emotionally.
Yeah, and it's also I'd put this in the hands of pretty much anyone willing to hold a controller,
and they'll like it. They'll have fun. Yeah, it's kind of lightning in the bottle. Mm-hmm. It's a lightning in the bottle game where somebody comes up with the idea and then probably no one will ever do it as well again.
Yeah, I don't even know if I don't know if a retitled Goose Game is really going to move the needle next time. But
that flash in the pan was a good flash, though, for sure.
What happened? Maybe somebody boxes the goose up and sends him to America, and he has to annoy people in Ohio.
That would be funny, actually.
Because they'll shoot him.
They will, and then they'll eat him for Thanksgiving or whatever. But I did have this thing in my mind where there's a box and there's this family in Ohio, and they open the box and they
yeah.
It would be freaking funny. So I think that's a great pick, man. And again, you're right. When you hear the word pleasant, this game springs to mind. The game that I picked probably does not, but I think I took the more literal approach of most pleasant surprise and ignored the word pleasant. My pick is the Resident Evil 2 remake. And when I say pleasantly surprised, that's because my expectations for this were not
it was good. It's basically, no, I get it.
Not just, hey, it was good. Hey, it's really freaking good. We've all been playing these remakes. They're hit or miss. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you don't really have a chance because the base game just isn't that great. But
and also, like, there has been no shortage of Resident Evil remasters and remakes.
Yeah.
These games haven't been gone long enough to miss.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of faith that this was going to be awesome, and it just it far exceeded my expectations on pretty much every front. Like, it was just great. Like, wow.
Yep.
Pleasant surprise. And I'll say this, now that, the RE3 remake is coming, like, now I'm all jacked up for that, because if they give that as much tender loving care as they gave this, it's going to be great.
Well, apparently it was going to be part of the same package.
Yeah, originally they were going to, bundle them together or something.
Like a couple years ago, they decided, like, no, there's too much.
That was smart.
Yeah, I think you can definitely sell Resident Evil 3 on its own.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this was definitely my most pleasant surprise from this year. And as I think before this even came out, RE2 is my favorite old school Resident Evil game already. So that helps. So
very few people would disagree with that.
That helped, but still my expectations were real freaking low. And
I didn't think anything could get me to care about Resident Evil again.
Right.
But I really like this.
Yeah, it was great. So there you go. Also glad to show Resident Evil 2 some love in these awards. I feel like just this year in particular, it just so happened to be like the year of the great action adventure. And this game's just kind of...
Although they do take too many shots to the head.
Yeah. Or maybe it's just my poor shooting. But, I don't know. I'm just pleasantly surprised by this game. I'm excited for future remakes now, although I think you kind of draw the line at RE3. Like, you don't really need to remake RE4, 5, or 6.
No, I mean, I would say go back and you could remake...
Code Veronica, maybe?
Code
that needs a lot of work.
Code Veronica would need a full revamp, but it
sure.
would be an interesting challenge. I would also say go ahead and remake 1 and 0.
Yeah.
Like, get the early... You don't need to do anything for Beyond, but, like, those early ones, like, get them all up to kind of the same snuff as 4.
Yeah.
And sell that sucker as a package for the next 15 years.
Yeah. I just feel like this game's getting lost in the shuffle. There were so many good action adventures this year. Because it's a remake, I feel like it's being discounted. Yet, it still stands as the highest reviewed game of the year. So, there you go. Resident Evil 2 Remake, most pleasant surprise. Up next, here's where we start getting into some of the more nefarious awards. The first one is most disappointing game. If we weren't short on time, I would almost just take a second to let people in the chat guess what both you and I picked, because I have a feeling they would get both of them right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they'd think we were both picking the same game.
That's possible too. That's a good point. So Matt, what game did you end up going with?
Well, I was actually going to pick the same thing you picked originally, but I figured you were definitely going to pick that.
Okay.
So I went with the other one, which is Anthem.
All right.
And to be fair, this is partly because of being reminded of the Fantasy League last week. I'm like, yeah, that was a big letdown.
Yeah.
And with Anthem, like... I still enjoy flying around and do I log into it periodically every once in a while, probably like once a month, and fly around and do some like free roam stuff and just like shoot some things and have fun like floating around in the Iron Man suit pretty much. But my attitude towards this game is sort of on the level of like a disappointed parent, like with BioWare. It's just like it's like your kid came home with a D, and you're like, I know you're capable of doing better than that. Yeah. Like I'm not even mad.
Are they even though at this point? I'm not so sure.
They are. They can. I mean, I don't know what's holding this up. I mean, they were trying to branch out. They're trying to do something new. They were under the thumb of the like weird corporate stuff. They had to make a game as a service, hell or high water. We'll see if Dragon Age 4 is anything in like 2022 or whenever the hell that thing comes out.
And if it isn't, it's over.
If it isn't, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. But like this is just one of those things, and like I feel like they haven't addressed the shortcomings of this game properly since it came out. It's been almost a year.
They haven't given up, though.
They haven't given up, but I feel like they still don't quite know what to do.
Yeah,
and that's a little concerning.
I've actually kind of been impressed that they have stuck with it. Because I think no one would have begrudged them for giving up.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not impressed that they've stuck with it because I think BioWare would. I am impressed that EA has let them continue to stick with it. I thought EA would just let them...
Well, it's like the third best-selling game of the year.
Yeah, but I thought EA would basically let them finish out like probably the first year of their development plan and like pull the plug.
I mean, that's the crazy part.
Doesn't seem like they're doing that.
This is the third best-selling game so far of 2019.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, I guess.
So, I mean, we're probably getting a sequel at some point. I don't know if they give it to BioWare to make, but...
Yeah, I don't know who you give this to. Like you get real chummy with Bungie.
Actually, yeah, that might be a solution.
They're real chummy with Bungie. Destiny 3 is like Anthem meets Destiny, and it's like you cross the universes over, and I've talked about that before, but that would be what I'd do.
Yeah, I mean, this game was definitely kind of on my hot list, but I actually did enjoy the game a good bit.
I didn't hate it. I just
it wasn't as good as I thought or hoped.
It could have been way better, and I expect better storytelling out of BioWare by default, and it's just not there.
GX Gear is saying Respawn should make Anthem 2. Not a bad pick.
It's not bad.
They're getting awful busy though. Let's let them stay on the Star Wars stuff. How about that? I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming for good Star Wars games. Let's just let them do that for a little while. I'm cool with that. My most disappointing game, everybody I already saw in the chat, they absolutely guessed it, and that is Shenmue 3. I don't know I don't want to berate the game again. I've done that enough, I feel like. I think when I talk about it here in the awards, I want to explain why it was the most disappointing to me, and that's because I've been a Shenmue fan like all these years. I was a huge fan of the first game. I ended up playing the import of the second one. Like a lot of people, I was very excited when when Part 3 was announced and the Kickstarter was launched and it was successful and it was being made. But I just being honest, it's just not a good game. And I never expected it to turn out to be what it is. I know you did.
I did pretty much. My problem, as I've labored to make clear, because some people have a real problem with you not liking this thing.
Yeah, they do.
And I'm like, I don't dislike it for the same reasons Shane dislikes it. I dislike it because of the things they added that I don't like. If they didn't have that stupid stamina system and had come up with a better fighting system to replace the Virtua Fighter stuff, which they obviously can't use for rights reasons at this point, if it had just been like a super retro Shenmue retread, I would have been fine with it. Yeah. It would have been exactly what I thought it was going to be, but instead I am shoving apples down Ryo's gullet all day so he doesn't fall over like an idiot. So,
see, that wouldn't have been good enough for me.
Unfortunately, I did not get this on PC where there is a mod to remove the stamina system. So
even if they could remove the stamina system, I would still think this is a crummy game.
If you remove the stamina system, my opinion of the game goes way up if you get rid of the stamina system.
I might then actually continue playing it if that was gone, because even though people are saying it's not a problem later on, that's not good enough for me.
Well, the thing is, it's not a problem later on and I got to that point. I got to the point where it was trivial because you could just keep buying stuff, but it's like, then why is it there?
Yeah.
It's just busy work.
Why did it ever exist?
And a lot of the game is busy work. Like, you should see how many fish they want you to catch later in the game. It's ridiculous. I've
beaten on this game enough. I'm not going to flog it again. But it was a huge disappointment for me. Maybe.
Well, I don't think you're ever going to have to deal with it again.
I don't know. I'll say this. This may be the second most disappointing game of my entire life. Actually third, because the first two are for the Atari 2600. That was Pac-Man and E.T. And this. That is literally. I never dreamed that they would make the game as if it was made in 1998. It just makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean, I told you that's what they were going to do.
It's crazy. Anyway, my most disappointing game in a landslide. In fact, my most disappointing game of the decade, which we did on the last Game Face, right there. Shenmue 3. I could probably go back another decade as well, and it would still be my most disappointing game. Next up, biggest news story of 2019. Man, this one was not short of nominees. There are tons of big stories this year. Picking the winner was almost impossible. The mental gymnastics I was doing trying to rationalize one story over another, I finally came to a way to decide my pick. But what's yours?
I went with the kind of ongoing loot box drama / regulation debate.
Okay.
Just because I think it's been constantly present one way or the other.
It has.
It's continuing on from a big story that's been going on for years now. And it's most interesting to me because I think it's the biggest in part because there was actual movement on this one in terms of what we're seeing in games.
Yeah, stuff has happened.
And it's interesting to me because, as I always thought, outside of a couple of countries with very strict gambling regulations, it is not being classified as gambling.
Yeah.
But as I suspected, to avoid being put under the thumb of those kinds of regulatory spotlights, the game publishers are moving away from that model.
Some of them are.
For the most part, they're moving away. Not the mobile games, obviously,
Yeah.
but like the big console games you already pay full price for, they're moving away from that.
We had Call of Duty DLC free this
Call
year.
of Duty's moving away from it.
Yeah.
EA's moving away from it.
Yeah.
They're basically they got scared.
They don't want the
noise
government
scared
to
them.
come in and
Of course
regulate.
not.
They want to regulate it themselves.
And that's kind of like what happens there is like, you can't change gambling rules really to make loot boxes count as gambling without causing a whole bunch of other things to be gambling that also aren't gambling. But what you can do is make a kind of ethical argument, and I think the House touched on this a little bit in a terrible bill that needed to be rewritten about 5 other ways if it went further. But the direction they seem to be going is the idea that, well, if you do put it in here, even if it's not officially gambling, we're still going to have the Gambling Commission look at it, and you're kind of going to be putting your game under the auspices of that, and that is the most effective way to get the publishers to run the other direction.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think it has been effective to some degree. I think you didn't need to outlaw loot boxes, you didn't need to declare them gambling. All you needed to do was scare EA and some of the other big publishers, and it seems like that has been effective. So I would say it's a big story, not just because it was like stuff that was reaching the level of like, parliaments around the world, but because it actually had an effect on this phenomenon in the game industry, and I think we are seeing the downhill of it now.
Vincent brings up a good point in chat. He mentions, I don't know if you saw this news story or not, but
The KD tracker?
Yeah. So in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, while you're playing the game, and this has never happened in a Call of Duty before, if you check the score while you're playing, it will not show you how many times you've been killed. It only shows you how many kills you have and your score.
I noticed that when brief time I was playing it. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, it's really freaking weird. And you only get to see your actual KD, your kill death average, after the match is over. And so this week is discovered that there's these accessories you can get in the game. You can get a watch. I only have one. I've played the game for the multiplayer probably for 25 hours. I've only earned one watch. I have one charm on my gun. They're selling all this stuff. And one of the watches that they're selling is a watch that will show you how many deaths you have. So you're saying, like, they're changing, they're going away. They're just finding other sneaky ways to make money.
It's not gambling.
It's true.
You know what you're buying.
It's true.
That's all you wanted.
At the expense of the people who paid $60 for the game and can't see their KD.
Yeah, well, that's just Activision going to be Activision.
That's so dirty, man. It's crazy.
You'd rather pay for maps?
No. I don't want to pay for anything. I want to pay $60 for a game and play it. That's not the way it works anymore. It's really bizarre. Okay, my pick for the best news story of 2019 is Blizzard in China. And again, I waffled back and forth on this category literally all day yesterday, trying to figure out which one to choose. And the reason I settled on this was because, kind of like your pick, it transcends video games. It's not just about gaming. It goes out into these cultural tentacles that have an effect on all these other parts of our society. I mean, in this case, we're talking about like freedom and democracy. Somehow video games got twisted all up in that, and that's a big deal. And then you get Blizzard mixed up in it, and we see, I think another reason this is a big news story for me is because I feel like it finally pulled the veil off of a lot of gamers' eyes. Because we sit here a lot of times, we're like, these people aren't your friends. These publishers aren't your friends. They want all your money. They'll do whatever they can to get every dollar out of your wallet.
Including ignoring human rights violations in the name of future profits to be had.
Yep, and I feel like we say this, and look, a lot of our viewers are younger, and I feel like when you're younger, you're impressionable, and you do kind of have this idealistic thought. And I don't want to say we're like old, jaded, angry guys or whatever.
Also, if you're younger than us, you're like 35.
Right,
it's not like you're fresh off the spring chicken boat or something.
But the truth is, like, we've been around the block. And when you do that, you learn stuff. And, like, when we tell you that these publishers don't care about you and they're not your friends, it's freaking true. But it's hard to provide empirical evidence of that to people. And finally, there it is. And not only was it a video game publisher showing fans that, yeah, we're not who you thought we were, it was also one of the worst possible studios that could do it. Blizzard. Because Blizzard has BlizzCon.
And Blizzard has the rep.
Right.
Like Blizzard's never really seriously screwed up before.
No. And not only that, I mean, and this was a serious screw up, but it was something that they had been screwing up for a decade. It wasn't just this decision that they made. They made the decision a long time ago to get in bed with China and make that market a priority in such a way that it would affect their cultural relationships with their users and the players. So I feel like this is the first time where the average Joe player can see what we've been talking about all this time, that it's not about any of that other stuff that you've romanticized in your mind and in your heart about these companies. They are there to make profit, and that is it. And if they can placate you and make you feel like they actually care about you, they're winning. They'll get more money out of you that way. So to me, this was the biggest story on a number of levels, not the least of which is just that, we should all stand up for Hong Kong and hope that ultimately they end up settled in a democracy in some way. So just a big story that reaches out a bunch of different directions, and I just felt like that was the biggest one for 2019. But I wouldn't begrudge somebody for picking that or yours or any of like 5 other stories this year, because there was just tons. Big news this year, just across the board from the beginning of the year until the end. Next up. Worst game we played. So this is different than most disappointing. Disappointing plays into your expectations of the game before you play it. This is just, of all the games you played this year, what was the frickin' worst one? Yep. And what was the worst game you played, Matt?
Crackdown 3.
Yeah, that's a good choice.
Like, for all the vitriol I might have about the decisions on Shenmue 3, this was the worst thing I played.
Yeah.
To the point that, like, it was so weird. It took a while for me to, like, admit to myself I wasn't having fun playing it. Because I liked the first one so much.
And you look at it, you're like, this should be fun.
Yeah, it should be.
Why isn't this fun?
Why am I not enjoying this? I mean, I can enjoy a mindless open world game, like, almost by default. Like, I've played all the Just Causes. I've played some of the Saints Row games multiple times. I played Mad Max twice. Like, I am no stranger to zoning out with an open world game with no redeeming value beyond, like, oh, this gives me a lot of stuff I can do and not think about what I'm doing. I couldn't even do that with this game. Like, I would hit points where I'm like, I don't know what to do next. I could fast travel over there. I'm just going to turn it off. Like, it's not fun to play. It's not fun to shoot things. It's not fun to jump around. It's not like there's no satisfaction anywhere in this.
I didn't enjoy a moment playing this game. I knew I wasn't going to, though, because I didn't even like the first Crackdown.
I like the first Crackdown a lot.
It was big at G4 back in the day.
Second one I thought was a little disappointing. But again, also I went back to play, Crackdown when they made it backwards compatible, like shortly, a while before this came out. And it didn't hold up.
Yeah,
it's not good. We progressed a bit. It turns out.
I could see that it was that back when it came out, though.
And this I think it was pretty good back when it came out. It's just it hasn't held up. It's been surpassed, and the basic elements of the game are not interesting or fun or compelling enough to go back to later and stand on their own merit.
And its big hook never existed.
Yeah,
it existed in videos and demos, but like that whole like cloud thing this game was supposed to have, it never materialized.
So it was just sort of there, and I went through most of it. I don't think I even finished it.
Thank God for Game Pass.
And that was the end
nobody
of that.
Spent money on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to fight you over Crackdown 3.
No, Crackdown 3 doesn't seem to have a lot of defenders. Usually at the end of the year, you see it's like, oh, don't forget about this terrible game that I liked inexplicably, but I haven't seen anybody do that with Crackdown 3.
Yeah. However, we have seen people do that with my pick. And again, I think no one's going to be surprised at this one, although they might. I think one thing we should say about this category is we're not saying this is the worst video game that came out in 2019. It's the worst one that we actually played. Mm-hmm. And we're in a position where we don't have to play a lot of bad games. I'm sure there's an associate editor over at GameSpot that would laugh at our picks for this because he's been playing the crap like I did when I was an associate editor at GameSpot back in like 2000. But it's the worst game that we played. And the worst game that I played in 2019 was, hands down, Shenmue 3. It's just... Again, I'm not going to go on the tirade again about how there are just countless objectionably bad...
18 years ago, the clock stopped.
It sure did. It sure did.
They didn't lie to you.
Yeah. There are so many elements of this game that are just objectionably bad. It's not subjective. It's not an opinion. There are just parts of it that are bad and broken. And it was easily the worst game that I played. I don't have to play games like this very often where there's awkward stuff in them and there's just stuff that just doesn't work or it's clunky or janky. Like, even indie games.
You should play more European stuff.
Yeah, you're right. That's where a lot of it comes from. Because even
you play
indie
Greedfall?
games. No, I haven't got to play it yet.
You should try Greedfall.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is... Yeah.
Is it as bad as Shenmue?
No.
Okay.
But it's like, imagine a BioWare game made kind of between Mass Effect 2 and Dragon Age 2.
Oh.
It's kind of like that.
But it was made in 2019.
Yeah, it's about on that level.
I have the code. I have not played it yet, though. It's just been sitting there. That was one of the games.
It's better than anything they've made since Mass Effect 3.
Is it better than, like, Technomancer?
Yes, it is.
It's better than that kind of stuff? Okay. And again, I don't want to beat up on this game anymore. You guys know where I stand on it. But it was... I mean, I'm in a good place if that's the worst game I played this year. Mm-hmm. Let's just be honest.
Did you play Crackdown 3?
Oh, yeah. I thought this was way worse. At least Crackdown 3 was uninspired and boring, but at least it wasn't just like broken and janky.
Yeah, it depended where you were in the city, really.
I guess. I think we both have good picks for this category. I don't think anyone's going to fight either one of us over. Well, a few people might. People might want to fight me over.
The comments are going to fight you on this one. I don't expect to get a lot of heat on Crackdown.
Well, they don't even know what I've played though. So how would they know if it was?
Well, they know
the
you
worst
played
game
Crackdown 3.
Oh, to me, this game's way worse than Crackdown 3. Way worse. Way less interesting. At least there's some action in Crackdown 3. But anyway, there you go. The worst game I played in 2019 is Shenmue 3. And again, if I'm in that position, I'm pretty freaking lucky because there are associate editors playing way worse games all around the globe. Next up, the game we didn't get. This is a fun category. This is kind of... I guess if you want to break it down to like a sentence or two, it's basically game got a high review score. I think that's insane. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And what's your pick for that, Matt?
Astral Chain.
Not
that I thought it was bad. I just don't understand why this got 9s. Like
that is extreme.
It's like it's just another Platinum game. And it's not even very compelling as a Platinum game. It's more like impressive that it looks as good as it does on the Switch. But I found very little to keep me playing in it, and it just seemed kind of like I'd rather just play Bayonetta if I'm going to play like a Platinum style thing. And like it doesn't do the combat as well as Bayonetta does, and it doesn't do kind of the open action world stuff as well as Nier Automata does. Like it's got a couple good ideas, but like it's a 7 out of 10 to me, like maximum. And like I'm not saying you can't like it, but I looked at just going back through the years stuff. Like I wasn't even thinking about picking this game for this category until like while I was doing the research for the list. I happened along the Metacritic for this again. And I'm just like, really? Like
the score is way too high.
So high.
Yeah,
like
I'd agree with that.
That's what I don't get about it is like why. I mean, I guess because Platinum's got the rep and the reviewers liked playing some action game on the Switch that was like competently put together, but it just didn't do anything for me. It felt like kind of a stew. It felt like somebody took all the leftovers from Thanksgiving and threw them in a pot and made like Platinum stew.
Yeah.
Like this is what this.
I don't know how much Nintendo paid Platinum to make this, but it probably wasn't worth it because it's not selling. Is it? I haven't been paying attention.
It
hasn't really charted at all.
So it didn't move my needle at all, and sometimes it just confuses me.
This might actually be one of those games you might want to go out and buy a physical copy of.
Oh, because like one day it'll be worth something.
Yeah,
it's possible.
It's just
game.
It has that air about it.
Yeah, weird games that happens to you. You know what? The one that bugs me that I didn't buy in time for that was Gravity Rush Remastered.
Oh.
Because I remember I saw that like the week before Gravity Rush 2 came out in the store. I was in my hand and I just didn't buy it. And like a week later, it was $100 on eBay. It was.
I mean, if you can find Astral Chain cheap during that first pressing, you might want to pick it up. It might be worth something someday.
Yeah,
just don't open.
Probably not true. It's probably not wrong. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good likelihood.
The game I didn't get. Again, you guys can probably all guess this. It's Death Stranding. Not that even it scored all that high. It
scored pretty high. I mean, it scored pretty high for what it is. That's
I think what confuses me
anyone
the most,
else making this game would have gotten 6s.
That's what I was getting at. That's what confuses me the most is that it is a game comprised entirely of a quest type that everybody hates.
Right.
So if you made an RPG that every quest in the RPG was a fetch quest, what kind of score do you think that RPG would get?
About a 6.
Yeah. And
maybe a 7 if it's this pretty.
Right. Yeah. And that's where I'm at with Death Stranding. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Yep.
The connectivity is what sets it off and sets it apart. But the rest of the game is just like, it's an RPG with one quest type. So I don't get why people are so enamored with this game. I'm not going to disrespect them for liking it or say that they're wrong for liking it. Just from my personal perspective, if you kind of compare this game to every other game that comes out, it got a pretty easy ride.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say I don't completely get it, because I do get the connectivity stuff, and it's really cool, and I enjoy that part of it. But unfortunately, that's not all there is to the game. The bulk of the game is just delivering stuff in fetch quests. So, it's hard for me to understand where some of the scores came from, where some of the fans are coming from on this game. Some people are saying like it's a relaxing thing, like they just they like playing a game for once where they don't feel like they're pressured and they can just kind of take their own time. I get that, and I totally respect that. But otherwise, to me, it's just very repetitive, doesn't feature a whole lot of depth, cool connectivity, but that's not worth $60 to me.
Also, BB is not cute. It's creepy.
Yeah.
Like, I keep seeing, like, what's the cutest character of the year? Is it BD or Baby Yoda or BB? I'm like, BB ain't cute.
No.
BB's like some kind of monster in a bottle.
It is.
Like, that's not I don't know what the hell you think is cute about that.
Yep. And there's Norman Reedus.
Yep. In his scarf and his sunglasses and his Bridges cap.
Okay, next up. Now we're moving into the awards where we have a runner-up and a winner. And there's only a few of those. There's 1, 2, just 3 awards left in our Game of the Year 2019. And the timing's working out good, I think. Yep. Okay. Our next award, and again, we have runners-up for this and a winner, is Best Graphics. And again, there's no rules for this. You know, it could be just based purely on art. It could be based purely on, oh my God, like the shaders and the ray tracing and the technical side of visuals. It's whatever you want. And Matt, what's your runner-up for Best Graphics of 2019?
My runner-up is Luigi's Mansion 3.
Well deserved.
Which just, I think, nails the real-time cartoon aesthetic better than anything else I've ever seen.
Yep.
Like, this could be, you could air this as like a cartoon series on Netflix with the exact same visuals, and I think you'd be fine. Like, you wouldn't have to change a thing.
Yep.
And
this game will never age.
No, the detail's crazy. You can see the stitching in his gloves in the close-ups. It's phenomenal work. Like, the detail in the animation, the personality in the animation is second to pretty much none. Like, it's some of the best animation Nintendo's ever done.
Yeah.
And that is,
and it didn't even do
that
it.
is saying something.
It's just like a second party game.
Yeah, it's phenomenally good. I don't think
you can see EAD was working with Next
Level.
Level.
There was a lot of support here, but I don't think the Mario characters have ever looked better than this.
No way. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's the best looking Mario game ever made.
It's like look at the stitching on the L. Look how you can see the individual threads that make up the L on his hat.
It gets more impressive though when you actually get inside and the stuff starts going all over the place.
And that's one reason it's so good, is because like they have confined spaces and they can really focus the power on those things. You can even see here, like the world they're in here is not especially detailed until they get to the hotel.
Yep.
But
Switch can only do so much.
Yeah, but I was really blown away by how good this looked by any standard, not just the Switch standard.
Yep, that's a good point, actually. My runner-up for Best Graphics is Kingdom Hearts 3. I did not like Kingdom Hearts all that much. I didn't really like the prior Kingdom Hearts. But when I started thinking about back across the year of like moments of where the graphics or the visuals of a game just impressed me or overwhelmed me, there was like 4 or 5 of them from Kingdom Hearts 3.
Kingdom Hearts 3 has a lot of good moments. I think the Tangled world is amazing. The pirate stuff could be mistaken for live action in some places.
Absolutely. And then I start thinking about how they use the visuals for gameplay elements too. There's that one carousel that you come to that's filled with all those like those balls. Mm-hmm. There's like 100 like red and blue balls, like and they're like, dude, just run through them and have fun. Like games don't do that enough anymore. That is one thing about that Japanese developers still get that a lot of Western developers don't get, is giving you that time to just play. And this game does it over and over and over again, where you're just presented with this situation and you're just like, how did they do that? Well, I don't care how they did it. I'm just glad that they did. And there was just tons of moments like that in this game. My issue for why this did not win is because for every moment like that, there's a moment where the game looks like ass. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Like, this game is like all over the place. It really is. And you can kind of tell that, like, it was built across a long period of time, and different people had their fingers on the game at different times. But there are some moments in this game that, to me, represent the very best of video game graphics from 2019.
If you're skeptical on this, look up on YouTube the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff.
Yeah.
It is astounding.
It really is.
Like, the first time I saw a clip of it, like before the game came out, I didn't realize it was Kingdom Hearts until they showed Sora's foot.
Yep.
I was like, what? Like, so yeah, the art, the graphics on this, this is almost like an art design choice here.
Yeah.
But like the visuals in some of these worlds are astounding. The Tangled world and the Pirates of the Caribbean world were very, very impressive.
I mean, even just the character models for the Disney characters are
they nail the look.
The
really
emoting
well.
and everything is just amazing. Great work on that front, anyway. I'm not a big fan of the game in general, though. Next up, Matt, your winner for the best graphics of 2019.
My winner is Death Stranding.
Wow. I was kind of surprised to see that.
I think this is it's not a particularly interesting game from an art direction standpoint, but I think what they pull off here in terms of the visual fidelity, the animation, keeping everything running at a steady frame rate, like just the verisimilitude, the attention to detail, the believability of the character models as real people, the complete lack of clipping through things and floating rocks in the open world, and like, shitty grass texture. There's none of that. This is the cleanest, like, least glitchy open world I've ever seen in a game. And the fact that they're pulling it out of the Horizon Zero Dawn engine, which had tons of shit like that, and some of the least impressive, like, facial acting of any of the open world games I've seen, they took that engine and did this with it, blows me away. Like, I'm not saying it's like the best looking game because it's all gray and washed out and sort of blah to look at because of just the art style they've chosen, the tone, the physical color tone they've chosen, but nothing else graphically impressed me on a technical level like this game.
Well, you say the attention to detail in this game, it's astounding.
It's ridiculous.
Like, the overall look of the game doesn't impress me that much because the open world is pretty empty. The colors really pop, though. Like, the green really pops in this game.
Yeah, when they decide to pop some color in, it's there.
But in these little scenes is where the game impresses me. Like, when you're dealing with, like, the invisible, like, creatures that are walking around and, like, the footprints are going into the sand.
And filled with water.
Filled with
and
water, yeah. Like, that little stuff like that's really, really impressive.
Just the detail on his eye twitches. The detail on how his hair falls and the other little characters with longer hair, how they fall. It's crazy. Like, the detail of how the packages age from the Timefall rain. The detail of where the rain lands and how that looks. Like, I mean, you can smell the weather in this game at times because of how good they made it look. And I don't think that solves many of its shortcomings to me, but I was the one thing throughout this game, no matter how tired I got of delivering people's goddamn mail, I was just stunned by how well crafted this was technically.
Yeah.
I hope it translates into a similar kind of jump for Horizon 2.
This was very similar to Kingdom Hearts 3 for me. It has those moments like I was talking about that just like blow your doors off, but then there's other times where the game doesn't look that great. So my pick for the winner is actually your runner-up, Luigi's Mansion 3. To me, it's hands down the best looking game of 2019. I don't think it's close. I think as far as technically what they're squeezing out of the Switch, art-wise, interactivity with the visuals, the physics, and it's just amazing. It's like a technical marvel to me, Luigi's Mansion 3. It doesn't matter that it's on Switch. To me, it's better looking than any game on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One this year. There's probably some PC game, I think, that'll probably top it if it's running on max settings. But to me, this is the whole package. It squeezes pretty much the most it can out of the hardware that it's got, and it doesn't even matter because it looks so good that it doesn't really matter what hardware it's on. The animation, again, it's like Disney-level animation in real time. You were talking about attention to detail. This game has it. Just watch his hose when he runs around, the hose on the vacuum. Like, everything has physics attached to it. Everything is animated. I don't even know if they're, like, hand animated. Like, I think that hose just has real physics tied to it.
Yeah, I think the hose is actually being affected by gravity.
Yeah, I mean, the more you pay attention to stuff like that in this game, the more it blows your mind. Like, as you go into some of the more cluttered rooms and just sort of haphazardly just start using the vacuum and you just watch what happens, it's insane that this
I also
game is on
recommend
Switch.
like doing like a freeze frame, like pausing or freeze framing when you can, when you do things like slam the ghost and stuff. The attention to the squash and stretch animation in that is crazy.
And the ghost
like,
faces.
just
like,
things you wouldn't even see unless you literally froze the video.
It's insane.
But it's in there.
The more I played this game, the more it blew my mind.
It reminds me of classic Disney. Like,
Yeah.
I've gone back on Disney Plus and watched all the original Disney animated films in release order. And to be honest, like I thought of this game several times while watching them. Like clearly, they're clearly inspired by that old style of just crazy attention to detail. Where you're watching Snow White and you're like, I can't believe someone actually just drew this.
Yeah,
like this game is like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Really a work of art. Bravo. Okay, we're down to our last couple categories, and we need to be because we're running out of time. The most innovative game. This is one of my favorite categories every year because I really love innovation and I try to reward innovation with everything I do in this industry, I'll be honest with you. It is a big driver for me. So this category is important. What's your runner-up for most innovative game, Matt?
Runner-up is Sekiro. I kind of went over this already when I gave it Best Action Adventure and Future Legend, but I think the melee combat sword fighting is a very tricky business, especially in games. Like it's hard to nail it. It's hard to do it well, especially if you decide to have clashing swords involved. Like if you want to just like make it feel good to hit somebody with a sword, like that's not as hard as making it feel like you're fighting against someone with another blade. And Sekiro does it better than anyone has ever done it. So like I wouldn't say the rest of it is tremendously innovative. It's kind of a straightforward Souls-ish game, but in terms of like how you interact combat-wise, it's unlike any of the things From did before it, and I think it does it better than anyone else ever has.
Okay. My runner-up for most innovative is a game that Matt is not a fan of, Astral Chain. And you said earlier that you didn't click with the combat. I can understand that, but that is also kind of the most innovative part of the game because you're controlling two characters at once. Mm-hmm. And they have created a system where you have two characters at once that can do combos together, all joined by the chain.
Yeah, wrapping the people up with the chain. It's like that's the closest it got to being interesting to me.
But you can also use it like a clothesline.
Yeah.
As you go farther into the game, you can really start working that stuff. And it is a little bit like rubbing your belly and tapping your head at the same time. It takes a while. It's almost like when you learn to drum and being able to play with your feet and your hands at the same time. There's this moment where your brain kind of breaks through to the other side and you can start like getting good with manipulating both characters. There was also an element similar to this in Devil May Cry this year. So it's weird that there are these like two Japanese games that both had this idea of control two characters at one time, but Astral Chain does it the best by a mile. I agree with everything else you said about this game. It is forgettable on a lot of levels, but the combat in this game is pretty innovative. And coming from Platinum, that's saying something because that studio has been known for doing it, and somehow it managed to do it again. I do agree, though, it's not especially intuitive, and that is kind of a chink in the armor as far as that's concerned, but at least Platinum is trying something new as far as combat is concerned, and you guys know me, I'm gameplay first, so I'm going to put emphasis on stuff like that. So for me, Astral Chain, my runner-up for most innovative. And now it's time for the winner. Matt, what is your winner for most innovative game of 2019?
My winner is Disco Elysium.
I want to hear your explanation.
Which is maybe weird because a lot of it's just dialogue and written stuff, and it is very comparable to something like Planescape Torment, which is a 20-year-old game. My argument would be that kind of twofold. First, no one else really tries to do what Disco Elysium is doing.
I mean, it's funny that it's innovative because it's kind of an old style that nobody does anymore.
Because it's building on something that came before it, but it came so far before it that most people that are going to play it haven't been alive long enough to have played that game, except that a remaster came out this year.
Oh.
Planescape came out on modern consoles for, a 20th anniversary celebration.
A
little late. This even goes even further into the idea of Planescape because Planescape still does have combat. This has nothing. Like, it's all done through dialogue and through stat rolling dice. There's no combat system in this. It's just pure dice rolling, stat driven dialogue choice. And I got to give that a little bit of an award for innovation, in part because like I don't value innovation quite on the same level you do. To me, execution is far more important than a new idea. Like if you can make an old idea and take an old idea and do it better than anyone else ever has, that is usually going to be more important to me than taking a new idea that I've never seen before, because iteration is key. Maybe it's because I'm a Star Wars fan, and Star Wars is basically like taking all these incredibly old ideas, throwing them together in a different order, and saying like, "Hey, look, you never seen that before, right?" Like, and this is the best story-driven game of its kind, I think, at least since Planescape, and it might be better than Planescape. Like, certainly, it's less clunky in terms of the fact that Planescape makes you play terrible D&D battles every once in a while, and this doesn't. This keeps it all kind of on the same level. So I decided, in a year that I really don't think had a ton of innovation.
Nope, there wasn't. This was a hard category.
I kind of went with innovation in a certain definition for this, but I also kind of used it as a kind of a bravery reward category.
Okay.
So
I hear you. My winner is, and this may shock some people, Ring Fit Adventure, the exercise app for Switch. I did not enjoy the game all that much. I have been trying to find, because on my doctor's orders, I need to start exercising more. I've been trying to find ways to exercise with video games because I like to play sports that occupy my mind while I exercise. And when you get to my age, you can't find people to play sports with at your age. So I'm trying to find alternatives. Like I said, I messed around with Beat Saber earlier this year. That's pretty good. That gave me a pretty good workout. At least got my heart racing. This I found more motivating than Beat Saber, easier to exercise, but I also found that my sessions were shorter with this game because it actually made me tired.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes you run in place the whole time. So.
Yeah. So it's good. I mean, I feel like this is a big first step towards real video game fitness solutions, not Wii Fit and all that other crap where they sold a balance board. Like, this is the progenitor of what's to come with fitness video games. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like even though I didn't enjoy it a lot and the execution was flawed in a lot of ways, to me, this is something that's going to be copied going forward. I wouldn't even be surprised if next year there's another game like this that uses the same peripheral that Nintendo's released. Mm. So, also, the peripheral's cool and different, and to me, it was just the one thing that stood out this year that really was different from everything else.
It didn't make that much of an impression on me, but I was impressed by the fact that it all worked the way they said it would work.
And, really well. Yeah. Like, that band, it registers that stuff. It's almost scary how well it works. So, there you go. Most innovative 2019 from me, Ring Fit Adventure. All right, 2 categories left. One is most anticipated game of 2020, and one is game of the year. Mm-hmm. So, Matt, what's your runner-up for most anticipated?
Runner-up is Ghost of Tsushima, which shouldn't surprise anybody.
Nope.
It's Sucker Punch. It's Samurai. It looks like it's going to be an open-world action-adventure game. It's pretty much everything I like, all in one place.
Yep. And anticipation for this. There is frothing demand for this after the delays and all the time we've waited after seeing it for the first time. I totally get it.
This was honestly almost the winner for me.
Yeah.
It came that close to being my pick for the winner.
Okay. My runner-up for most anticipated game of 2020 is The Last of Us Part 2, the other place.
The other obvious pick.
But, I mean, it's funny. It's This Is Us. You stray a little more towards that type of a game, and I like games like The Last of Us a little bit more.
You like to shoot things. I like to hit things with a sharp stick.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. And then culminating with we match the same pick, and I think everybody's pick for the most anticipated game of 2020, which is Cyberpunk 2077. Just put it in my veins now.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, I really debated on the Ghost of Tsushima versus this, and in the end, I just kept reminding myself of how good those side quests are in Witcher 3, and how the woman that wrote most of those is the narrative director on this, and it's I think this is going to be narratively one of the most impressive things in a long time.
Well, it's every time I learn more about it, I love it even more. They did the whole music thing at the Game Awards. And Grimes, I freaking love Grimes. She's making music.
The soundtrack seems really beyond what I thought they were going to do with it.
And it's not they're just licensing songs from these
artists.
They're creating, Grimes made a new track for the game. It's awesome. Everything, again,
every time
it's
breathtaking.
Every time I see it, yeah. Every time I see something more about this game, I just want it more. It was a no-brainer for me for 2020.
4 months.
Yep. And here we go.
Coming up.
It's that time, people. It's time for SIFTD to announce its Game of the Year for 2019. Again, we have a runner-up for this category as well. Drum roll, Matt. What's your runner-up for Game of the Year?
Runner-up is Disco Elysium.
Yeah, you had to, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you would be doing what the Game Awards did.
Right.
It had to be your Game of the Year. And do we even really need to say anything more about it at this point? I think people get it.
Game good, play game.
Yep, game good, buy game, play game.
Yes.
Yep. My runner-up for Game of the Year is Control. Which
it's a good song.
I wish I could have found more opportunities to reward this game throughout the Game of the Year. And look, when I'm picking, I don't do that. I don't say, oh, I really want to reward this game, so I need to slide it into this category. When I'm done, I always look back and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, for a lot of these categories, you should imagine Control just bubbling beneath the surface.
Right below. I mean, almost for most innovative. But the truth is that it actually borrows a lot of stuff from prior games, but does it really well.
I almost put it in there instead of Sekiro because of my preference for iteration and execution, because this takes a lot of forgotten ideas from things like PsyOps and Second Sight and finally capitalizes them in a modern game that refines it in a better way.
And those two games are the reason it did not win for me, because those two games exist. If PsyOps didn't exist, this game would have absolutely been my most innovative game. So it's just a difference of perspective. It is that good, though, people. I know it's not selling very well, so I know you people aren't convinced on this game.
At the very least, you want to have this thing ready to go for when the Alan Wake DLC comes out next year. Because I think the DLC...
Well, then by then it'll be like $10 or whatever.
Well, I think the DLC on this is going to be really good.
The base game is great.
The base game's really good already.
I don't know how much more... I don't know why people just don't believe us when we say how good it is. It's not selling. No one's interested in it.
I mean, I didn't care about it until the day I played it.
Yeah, I don't know
why. I don't know why. Even the ads, the trailers didn't sell me on it. But as soon as I played it, I was like, oh wait, it's okay. And as soon as I got my first powers, I was in.
It's that good, people. We're not lying to you. We have no reason to lie about this game. Go buy it. Maybe wait. Use your gift cards you get for Christmas and wait till after Christmas. You'll probably get it on a discount. Because my guess is you're going to get tons of other games and you can hold on until January to play this one.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for our Games of the Year for 2019. No more runners-up. This is the winner. Matt, what is your Game of the Year?
Sekiro Shadows Die Twice.
Yeah. I have
Not a shocker, really.
I have a question for you, actually. Mm-hmm. Had you decided that this was your Game of the Year before you watched the Game Awards, or did the Game Awards help convince you?
Game Awards had no effect on me.
Okay.
I was glad to see it get some love.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's because the only thing everybody could agree on out of that lineup.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I thought Disco Elysium was probably my Game of the Year. But one of the things I like to do is all my top picks. I like to go back and play them again, like in that week between the last week's show and this week's show. And when I got back into Sekiro after not playing it for 6 months, I remembered how snappy it was and how good it was. And also in comparison to Fallen Order, how much better that felt, and how I'd kind of forgotten. I'd given Fallen Order a little more slack because Sekiro had faded in my memory, and then playing Sekiro again, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is great. This feels great.
Yeah.
And in the end, as much as I love Disco Elysium, Sekiro was just... It comes down to that thing of what is the thing you like the best or value the most in a game, and
I mean it's Matt Kyle, the video game.
Yeah, if you made that thing glow and put him
done.
in a Jedi robe, it would. I don't know if anything would ever touch it ever again.
Well, that brings me nicely to my pick for Game of the Year, and my Game of the Year for 2019 is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I just have to say that
I didn't see that coming.
I waffled on this. I mean, I literally changed the rundown 3 or 4 times. I even printed them one time and then had to go and throw those away and reprint them whenever I added this. It's what I said at the beginning of this show, which is either you have a no-brainer winner this year or you're splitting hairs. And this was absolutely a case of splitting hairs. I can't even really say that I drastically liked Fallen Order more than like 4 or 5 other games. It got to the point where I looked at it like I enjoy them all equally, but then I started looking at the different elements of each game and more specifically the weaknesses of each game, trying to find a weakness, trying to find a crack in the veneer. And this was the game I had the hardest time finding a major issue with. And look, I know you, because you're a big Souls fan or From Software fan, the snappiness of the combat was probably a little bit bigger of an issue for you.
Really, the biggest problem is that it came out in the same year as Sekiro.
Yeah.
Like,
I love this game. Like, I love everything about it. I love the story.
Yeah.
I love all the characters in it. I love the level design. Technically, it's stunning. The voice acting, the music, BD1. Like, this was the game I could not find a major gripe with. And so it is my game of the year for 2019. So there you go. That's it. That's SIFTD Game of the Year Awards for 2019. We do have one more fun award to give before we go. And I'm just going to announce it, and then we'll run the winner underneath while I kind of say goodbye. And our pick for Trailer of the Year is the Overwatch 2 debut cinematic. This was a hard category that I had to spend a lot of time on to try to find. Did a lot of putting SIFTD through its paces trying to find the best trailer from the last 12 months. But that is our pick for Trailer of the Year. And while Jared plays that, we're going to bid you guys adieu for 2019. It has been an amazing year. Thanks to all you guys who have been on the chat. You guys make the show better. Let's just be honest. Like, there are comments. You guys, if we can't remember something, you guys are filling us in right away. And that makes the show better for all the people who watch or listen to the archive. So, to me, all the people who watch us on Twitch, they are a part of the show and in making the show better. So, thank you. Thank you for all the Twitch Prime that you guys have pledged this year. Thank you for our subscribers who are still on our old SIFTD plan. Thank you for our patrons who have been so gracious this year. I just can't thank you guys enough. You've been an amazing audience, amazing patrons. It's been a great year. We got back in our studio this year, finally got off Matt's couch. I'm sure he's like, thank God for that. It's been a great year, but I'm telling you right now, 2020 is going to be bigger and better for SIFTD. We have some big stuff coming, people. So stay tuned. Quick updates. I picked the winners of the loot boxes. We have the 6 winners. I'm cutting the video together now. That'll probably be up tonight. So watch your inboxes on Patreon. And because if I'm only going to have like 2 days to ship this stuff out before I leave for the East Coast. So try to be on it. Try to keep an eye on your Patreon inbox in case you're one of the winners. But we do have the 6 winners drawn. I just have to put the video together and upload it for you guys to see it. We have tons of content coming out. While I'm going to be gone and not in LA for the next 10 days, we have 2 episodes of Ask Shane Anything coming while I'm gone. We have 2 episodes of Pact or Factor coming while I'm gone, which are special episodes I should add, complete with wardrobe even. We have the top 10 games of 2019, a SIFTD countdown coming, and we have Dossier for January. All that's coming while I'm gone over the next like 8 or 9 days. So I've been busting my butt to get all this stuff done. I'm not done with it yet. I've still got 2 more days of grinding before I leave. But we wanted to make sure that we had something for you guys while we're gone. During the next like week and a half, curation will be slower on SIFTD. There's just not as much happening. Kind of after this Friday is when it just goes dead. But there'll be some updates. But more importantly, we'll have a bunch of original content for you guys while I'm gone. So, Matt, thank you, man.
Sure.
For everything.
You're welcome.
Letting us camp at your house for the first few months of the year. Just being a great host.
Yeah, what else was I using it for?
Jared. Look, we got new TriCaster TDs this year. Jared, pull the window aside so they can see you, Jared. So they know that you're just not some dude in, like, the shower.
Where is he? There he is.
There's Jared, our TriCaster TD. Thank you for everything this year, Jared. You've been amazing. You've been great. Yeah, it's just been an awesome year. Thank you guys for everything. Without you guys, none of this would be available. We would still be sitting on Matt's couch right now. So thanks from the very bottom of my heart. I hope you guys have an amazing holiday season. Whatever you celebrate is great. Hope you have a great New Year's, a safe New Year's. As I always say, take an Uber, take a cab, don't drink and drive. But much love for you guys. I hope you guys all have a great holiday season. We'll see you in the new year.